Good morning, it's 7 o'clock. Welcome to Mornings with Ridge and Frost.
With Sophy and Wilf, good morning from both of us. Lots to fit in this morning.
He's going to shoot. Is that good?
Oh my God, so epic. The Tartan Army's American dream. Scotland's men beat Denmark to qualify for their first World Cup in 28 years.
Subliminal! Scotland! Hey, we know how to do the hard way! Superb!
The bill to release the Epstein files passes through the United States Congress. Now it just needs the president to sign it.
The wife of Jamal Khashoggi says there's been zero justice for his death as Donald Trump defends the Saudi crown prince.
And later in the programme, well, it is International Men's Day and the government's launching a new men's health strategy. So we've got the singer, Professor Green, joining us to talk about why we need to take mental health seriously.
And an extraordinary story. Sky News investigates a new suspect in the case of a man who was killed with one punch while on a stag do in Zante. To our first story breaking, we have some of the latest inflation data just crossing. The forecast coming in for this was it to be at 3.6% for the month of October. Last month was 3.8%, and it has indeed come in with expectations, 3.6% for the month of October. As I said, that was what was expected. September had been higher at 3.8%. Core CPI, which strips out volatile energy and food, came in at 3.4%. That was also what was expected. Let's get straight out to Gurpreet. She's in West London for us. Gurpreet, bring us some of the key takeaways from this data that's literally just crossing.
Yeah, it's literally just dropped, but I think there are a few things to point out here. Yes, the headline rate of inflation has come down from 3.8% to 3.6%. That will be viewed as good news, particularly as some of the kind of underlying data points in this release, which are literally just coming through, suggest that inflation is cooling. But the inflation rate, as you know, is still significantly above the Bank of England's 2% target, and policymakers at the bank will have that at the back of their mind before they make their decision next month on whether to cut interest rates. But nevertheless, this is a step in the right direction and a sign that we might be over the worst of this recent surge we've been seeing in inflation. For some time now, economists have been telling us that this is a hump, that this rise in inflation is being driven by temporary factors that will settle down. Things like higher utility bills, so energy bills, council tax, also regulated bus fares and rail fares, things like that, as well as food. I'm in a supermarket, as you can see around me. We know that food prices have been rising considerably. We've been on quite a journey with food prices after the pandemic. You might remember the cost of living crisis, where food prices went up considerably after the war in Ukraine. And particularly since March, they've been rising consistently. And to a large extent, that's been driven by the Chancellor's own policy on national insurance contribution increases. Supermarkets have been passing that on to consumers. We've had data released today which shows that food and non-alcoholic beverages was up 4.9%. That was up from 4.5%. So food prices are still rising considerably in the economy, and policymakers will be nervous about food prices. And the reason they're nervous about food prices is because of all the types of inflation. Food is the one that you look around and you go, oh, wow, prices really are rising around me. And when people feel like prices are rising, then they go to their bosses and they ask for pay rises. And policymakers fear that that could lead to what they call a wage price spiral, whereby higher wages cause you to then higher prices cause you to then demand higher wages, and the spiral goes on. But the bank will be weighing up all this data today, along with evidence last month that inflation fell faster than expected, or at least the result was coming in better than expected. They'll be weighing that up against other economic data, like joblessness data. We know that the unemployment rate is rising, that jobs are disappearing from the economy, and it should give them confidence to cut interest rates in December. Going into this, financial markets, they put bets on whether they think the bank will cut interest rates. They put those odds at 80%. It's likely now that probability will go up, particularly as we've got data on services inflation, which is underlying inflationary pressures in the economy. The services sector, as we know, is a major employer in the UK. That data also came in better than expected. And of course, all of this has added salience in the days running up to the budget. The Chancellor will be looking to grab onto any good news that she can find. She can now point to falling inflation, even if she'll have to wait till after the budget for a potential cut in interest rates.
Gurpreet, great stuff. Thanks very much for that. I think it would be interesting if the Chancellor frames this as falling inflation off 1 month's data when you're still at 3.6%, you know, well above the 2% target. But more interesting will be if the Bank of England feels they have enough cover to cut when we're still so far above target. But,
I think that's it. And what being above target means is basically food prices, all the prices are still going up like at a faster rate than we were expecting, even though it's a fall in inflation. If you feel like things are still getting more expensive, that's because they are. It's true.
But 3.6 obviously is lower than 3.8 last month, but it's well above 2. Now, this is epic. This is so... I've watched this clip about 10 times since getting in. It's a first this century for Scotland. Since 1998, the men's football team have qualified for the World Cup.
And I have to say, they did it in style, but also with, I think, the heart in the mouths of every person who's watching the game here as well, because they won 4-2 over Denmark, but the final 2 goals came in stoppage time. And
the victory was even sweeter, given that it was in front of a packed Hampden Park, their home ground, which is where Conor Gillis sent this report from.
This is what a victory, a Scottish victory, looks like. A feeling that has been bottled for close to 3 decades.
What do you make of that?
No Scotland, no party.
Are you going to be booking your flights to America?
I sincerely hope so. I sincerely hope so. Oh, it's amazing. It's just...
What does this rank in terms of life events?
Probably just below our marriage.
What's your verdict on that?
I can't argue with that. That's it.
He's going to shoot. Is that good?
The last time Scotland's men went to the World Cup was 1998. Most of these players were not even alive then. But now the wait for a rerun is finally over.
Oh my God, my heart was like all over the place. It took us through all sorts of emotions, but oh my God.
I'm 45 now and never been to a World Cup, so here we go.
World Cup, so this will be my second.
For Scotland?
Yep,
all
that's
right.
how you're into.
And are you going to go to America?
Well...
For a generation, hope has travelled hand in hand with heartbreak. But Scotland, right here at Hampden, have now rewritten the story. A victory for the nation and vindication for the squad.
Feels good. I said at the start of the campaign, I felt the pressure of the nation to try to get to World Cup. So immediately that falls off your shoulders and you feel a little bit better. But what a fantastic group of players. Never give up. I've said it for a long time now about how good they are and how determined they are to be good for their country. They showed that tonight. I couldn't be happier for my players. I couldn't be happier. It's fantastic. It feels great.
With practically the last kick of the ball to absolutely rubber stamp Scotland's place.
And so Scotland returns to the World Cup stage. This was the moment history finally turned in this country's favour. Conor Gillis, Sky News, at Hampden Park in Glasgow.
Wow. I've watched that, as I said. No, obviously, I didn't watch it last night. I was fast asleep. But watched that since coming in. And it's captured in the just ecstasy of the commentators.
I love it. It's so good.
It's so good. Kieran Tierney as well, former Arsenal player, scored the all-important goal. Scott McTominay, by the way, we didn't even show it when they went initially 1-0 up, scored a fantastic overhead kick. And again, you think about it, 6 World Cups they haven't qualified for.
Yeah.
It's first time this century. So richly deserved ecstasy there from those Scotland fans, who I imagine will have very heavy heads this morning, but they deserve to enjoy it.
So they should.
Exactly.
Almost 3-decade wait. I just want to bring you as well. This is a great little nugget.
Amazing.
So The smallest country ever has also reached the World Cup right now. This is Curacao. It's a tiny Caribbean island. And just to put in context what an incredible achievement this is, right? They've got a population of 150,000 people, so that's fewer than Slough, which is absolutely crazy to me. And it also covers only 444 kilometres squared, so you could fit 4 Curaçaos within Greater London, and yet they've qualified for the World Cup. This is them winning.
All importantly,
look at that! I love the celebration. It gets me, the celebrations.
And Jamaica are, a decent footballing nation, and they were in the same group, and they've topped that group and go through. Jamaica coming second, and they held Jamaica to a draw in that last game to get through. Do you know? I was thinking, how on earth have they managed this, given those statistics? I don't want to take the gloss off.
No, don't, Wilf. Don't kill it for me.
Okay.
What? Go on then. What?
Well, so I think, and I'm literally just trying to read this as we were watching the Scotland thing. So CONCACAF, the grouping that it's obviously regional qualification, there's a European qualification, doesn't have, as usual, Canada, USA and Mexico in it because they automatically qualified because they're hosting the World Cup. So that made that kind of grouping, I guess, a little less competitive. But still, they've beaten Jamaica. They've
got more people than Slough.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Incredible.
God, the World Cup's going to be good.
I'm excited. I'm very excited indeed. To the US now, because the campaign for transparency around the Jeffrey Epstein scandal reached a major milestone last night. The US Congress passed a bill to force the release of files related to the convicted sex offender.
The bill will now head to Donald Trump's desk for him to sign, which the president's indicated he will do, despite his initial opposition to the legislation. James Matthews has the story.
This is who you're fighting for. This is who Congress is fighting for. This is who the House of Representatives are fighting for.
This was me at 14 years old. I was 16. 16.
They came to Capitol Hill with searing testimony, the centre of this story.
What's the message today, do you think?
It's going to be a powerful one.
To the President of the United States of America, who is not here today, I want to send a clear message to you. I am traumatized. I am not stupid.
You didn't just make a small dent. You made a monumental impact.
Survivors of Jeffrey Epstein told their stories against a shifting political backdrop. Listen to the friend turned enemy of Donald Trump, the MAGA loyalist he now calls traitor.
A traitor is an American that serves foreign countries and themselves. A patriot is an American that serves the United States of America and Americans like the women standing behind me.
On a landmark day at Congress, the president was confounded outside and in. This was the vote Donald Trump had long resisted. Republicans from his party backed a vote to release the Epstein files, first in the House, then by unanimous consent in the Senate.
Without objection, so ordered.
The Senate has now passed the Epstein bill as soon as it comes over from the House.
Across Washington, Donald Trump was welcoming Mohammed bin Salman, the Saudi crown prince. If the Epstein vote was something he didn't want to see, it was the question he didn't want to hear.
Mr. President, why wait for Congress to release the Epstein files? Why not just do it now?
You know, it's not the question that I mind, it's your attitude. You're a terrible person and a terrible reporter. As far as the Epstein files is, I have nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. I threw him out of my club many years ago because I thought he was a sick pervert.
Back on Capitol Hill, Donald Trump wasn't the only former Epstein associate in the frame. What do you say today to Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, the man formerly known as Prince Andrew?
I do think that Prince Andrew does need to come and testify at our oversight committee, and that can be bipartisan. But I share Thomas's view that the urgency that the British people have shown in getting justice needs to inspire an urgency here in America.
This was a significant step in the politics of justice. In this modern American scandal, it won't be the last. James Matthews, Sky News, in Washington.
Well, staying in the US, ahead of that vote on the Epstein files, President Trump welcomed Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince to the White House for a pretty unusual visit. I think it was the first time that he had been there for, 7 years?
And in the Oval Office, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman was asked by a journalist about claims he ordered the murder of the journalist Jamal Khashoggi.
The Washington Post reporter was killed inside the Saudi consulate in Istanbul in 2018. And the CIA concluded the prince had approved the killing, something he's always denied. We did just want to bring you this. So this is President Trump's response to that question.
Your Royal Highness, the U.S. intelligence concluded that you orchestrated the brutal murder of a journalist. 9/11 families are furious that you are here in the Oval Office. Why should Americans trust you? And the same to you, Mr. President.
Now, who are you with?
I'm with ABC News, sir.
You're with who?
ABC News, sir.
Fake news. ABC fake news. One of the worst in the business. But I'll answer your question. As far as this gentleman is concerned, he's done a phenomenal job. You're mentioning somebody that was extremely controversial. A lot of people didn't like that gentleman that you're talking about. Whether you like him or didn't like him, things happen. But he knew nothing about it, and we can leave it at that. You don't have to embarrass our guest by asking a question like that.
About the journalists, it's really painful to hear, anyone that been losing his life for, no real purpose or not in a legal way, and it's been painful for us in Saudi Arabia. We've did all the right steps of investigation, etc., in Saudi Arabia. And we've improved our system to be sure that nothing happened like that. And it's painful and it's a huge mistake. And we are doing our best that this doesn't happen again.
It's extraordinary. And I think the thing that is important to highlight is that it was the American intelligence agencies that concluded that the Crown Prince, the guy sitting next to Donald Trump there, had ordered the capture or killing of Khashoggi. I mean, obviously he denies the involvement, but it's just Donald Trump there, sitting there, effectively rubbishing it and going against the findings of his own agencies.
Of his own agencies during his first term in office. This wasn't a sort of, but Biden said it happened that way and I've never accepted that. Trump accepted it in his first term. And it became, MBS absolutely became persona non grata for the first year or two after that, during Trump's presidency, and the same, we're going to talk about business leaders as well, but for everyone across the Western world, and that is a really striking sort of minute soundbite for every single line of it.
It really is. And after that interaction that we just heard in the Oval Office, Yelda Hakim, my colleague, spoke to Jamal Khashoggi's widow, who said there has been no justice for her husband's killing.
If everybody realizes this is taking the freedom of asking and the freedom of a journalist away, and this is itself is shameful, and it will take me to some dictator country in Middle East. What is the difference in this stage? And my husband was not controversial man, or is unlikely. Even if someone doesn't like him, which is sometimes happened, doesn't justify the action of kidnapping him, torture him, killing him, and dismantle his body. There is nothing to justify the crime happened. No explanation for it.
It was a really important interview with Yalda last night, and you can watch the full thing on the Sky News website. Also, just want to show you some pictures, because then there was a sort of state event, a state dinner later on. Tons of people were there. Elon Musk was there, which has got some attention, perhaps more so because it might suggest a thawing of relations with President Trump than anything else. Other big business leaders, from Tim Cook of Apple was there, the head of FIFA, head of the World Cup was there, Gianni Infantino, and there was Cristiano Ronaldo as well, which I guess my point in all this is it is as striking as we've already framed it, because many of the, as Steve Schwarzman I can see down there, the Blackstone CEO, many of these business leaders absolutely would not attend the Davos in the desert, as it's called, that Saudi Arabia holds. I remember covering it at the time. Suddenly they all had to pull out. So it's a huge U-turn from all of them. I guess, and this is not to celebrate it, but I'm not that surprised by it all. I mean, we've known this state visit was coming, and we as the UK as well as the US are all doing business with Saudi Arabia again. And that doesn't mean it's okay necessarily, but Cristiano Ronaldo, he plays football in Saudi. Are we that surprised that he's there No.
Yeah, well, we've seen an awful lot of investment happening in sport by Saudi Arabia recently, and I guess this perhaps demonstrates why it's a very important soft power tool for them. Well, a group of MPs are warning that the UK is not prepared to defend itself from a military attack. It might be failing to meet its NATO obligations. Well,
the year-long survey found that plans to fix the UK's defence problem were moving at a glacial pace. Rob Powell's here. Rob, I sort of balanced this out by saying, are we that surprised by this report? And how much weight is it likely to carry from here to catalyse action?
Yeah, I think you're right. It's not massively surprising, but that doesn't make it any less anxiety-inducing, I suppose. Because the top line of it is basically there isn't a plan. When it comes to the capability of the UK to essentially repel an enemy force, to defend the homeland, as it's put in here, they say the capability just isn't there, and that means it's in doubt whether the UK is meeting its Article 3 NATO requirement to be able to have the capacity to resist armed attack. In terms of why, well, one is just that fact of lack of planning. They say the Strategic Defence Review earlier this year sort of set out the aims, but there hasn't really been any flesh put on the bones. They said there's been a lack of engagement with the public as well, essentially to try and get people to understand that we're living in a different age now. There's been a lot of language that's come from ministers and the government about it, but not a lot of attempts to sort of have a national conversation that Sir Keir Starmer had initially promised. They said reliance on the US is another part of this, over-reliance on the US at a time when the US seems to be pulling back and less sort of eager, I guess, to potentially step in defence-wise when it comes to Europe. Capability, especially with air missiles, and also defence industry, essentially the running down of being able to create arms, munitions, things like that in the country. That isn't there anymore. John Healey will address that directly, the Defence Secretary, today. He's giving a speech later this morning where he's going to talk about 13 sites that have been identified for producing munitions. And it's a sort of pre-budget pitch-rolling exercise as well, because he's going to say, yes, the threats are bigger, but there's economic opportunities in that as well. Look, the conclusion of this report, though, is it's just not going fast enough. There's one quote in here from Lord Robertson, who used to be NATO Secretary-General, to the committee, which was pretty striking, where he said, "We are not safe. That is the reality of today. People think they are safe. They are not safe. People thought they were safe in eastern Ukraine, and very suddenly they were not."
The conclusion, he's saying, we're not safe. in multiple,
That's what I take
multiple
from it,
different ways.
Yeah, Rob, thank you very much indeed. Well, I mean, look, it's worrying, isn't it? Let's be honest, an awful lot of very strong warnings there, and we can put them directly to somebody who is right at the heart of this issue, the Defence Minister, Luke Pollard. I mean, let's just start on this report, shall we? The UK isn't ready to defend itself from a military attack. The UK is not safe. Do you agree?
Well, we're living in a new era of threats, and I think broadly what the Defence Select Committee set out today chimes perfectly with where we set out the threats facing us in the Strategic Defence Review that we published a few months ago. That set out that we're facing new threats, new challenges from our adversaries who are increasingly working together, that we need to learn the lessons from Ukraine. That means retiring old equipment, bringing new equipment that would deter and defeat aggression if necessary. And it also means moving at pace to end the hollowing out and underfunding of our armed forces that we saw under the last government. That's why, since we've taken office, we've increased defence spending, £5 billion extra in our budget this year. Every year ahead of us for the next decade, increasing amounts of defence spending, a desire and a commitment to spend more of that money with British businesses and to refill our stockpiles. And as your reporter was just suggesting in the piece before I spoke, it's around the 13 potential munitions factory sites that we're announcing today. That is creating at least 6 of them in this Parliament, delivering that increased capacity that we need to refill our stockpiles, and importantly, also then sell that excess capacity to our NATO allies, helping to create a stronger NATO. So we are moving at pace, but there is more to do.
I want to talk a little bit more about your announcement today, the 13 new sites that you wove into that answer, but the question that I asked you was, are we safe?
Well, we live in a new era of threats, so there are new threats. No,
stop. I'm sorry, I'm going to come in. We live in a new era of threats. I don't understand what that means, genuinely. I think it's meaningless. Are we safe?
The men and women of our armed forces keep us safe. But because we live in a new era of threat, which means there are new threats facing the United Kingdom, which we set out very clearly in the Defence Review, that means we have to do things differently.
We are safe. We are safe. That's the answer.
Well, we are safe, but we are facing new threats. Both of those can be true at the same time, Sophie. And so what we've got here is the men and women of our armed forces being able to defend against threats, but we need to increase the amount of abilities they have, the capabilities, bring on the new technologies that help them do so, because we know that our adversaries are investing in new technologies. We can see the way that war is now being fought differently in Ukraine than perhaps we had prepared for in the past. That era of expeditionary warfare, where the UK forces fought in Iraq and Afghanistan, that has come to an end. And we now need to focus on our war-fighting readiness against a peer adversary. That means a country like Russia, with its capabilities that we can see being battle-honed and tested in Ukraine, to make sure that our forces, as part of NATO, have the ability to deter aggression, but if called upon, be able to defeat it. And that's why we're investing in new technologies and putting more investment into our forces.
You mentioned Russia as one of the adversaries. I just want to ask about China, if I may as well. It's named in this report, and there's an increased threat from China. We've seen, of course, MI5 warning MPs they're at risk of being targeted by Chinese spies, even naming 2 headhunters on LinkedIn who were targeting advisors, for example, parliamentary staff. And the reason I ask this question is because the trial of 2 alleged Chinese spies collapsed because the government declined to say China was a threat to national security. So is China a threat to national security?
China poses a number of threats to the UK, but they also present a number of opportunities for the UK. It's a complex picture with China, as I'm sure you've heard from government ministers over many weeks on this. That's precisely the reason why yesterday the Security Minister, Dan Jarvis, took the steps of disclosing some of those activities that we have a concern about in relation to threats to undermine our parliamentary democracy. MI5 taking, again, unusual steps of publishing advice to parliamentarians, but that's advice that should be heeded by the rest of the public as well, because as we become more online as a community, the ability for people that wish us harm or wish us to gain access to information they shouldn't have access to becomes more plentiful. And that's why we have to take steps to recognise the risks that exist, to invest more in those systems to protect them. And that's why the Minister yesterday set out over £100 million for new technologies to look at securing our online infrastructure and our parliamentary democracy.
We don't have huge amounts of time, but I am keen to ask about these 30 new sites to make military weapons, your big announcement today. You mentioned there that you'll be selling to other NATO countries, but I'm just wondering about where these weapons might be sold to. We've obviously seen Donald Trump hosting Saudi Arabia in the States, saying that they're going to be providing F-35 warplanes. I mean, is that the kind of thing that we might be doing with these new military sites?
Well, the first thing we need to do is refill our own stockpiles, because we've donated much of our kit and equipment to Ukraine, quite rightly, under this government and the last government. We now need to refill those stockpiles with the latest technologies. The munitions factories we're setting out today, with the 13 potential sites, we will build at least six of those factories in this Parliament. That will help provide the energetics, which is the explosives, the part of any munition that goes bang, for people that don't follow this area closely, that we need. There's a shortage of energetics, not only in the United Kingdom, but across the NATO alliance. That's why creating more of these factories in the UK not only helps our own armed forces, but it also supports our ability to export to our NATO partners. Now, we know that our friends in NATO, especially those on NATO's eastern flank that border Russia, are investing more in defence. And that means that we have the opportunity here to make defence an engine for growth, supporting that growth mission, as well as making NATO stronger. And the more that we can cooperate with our allies, it's that collective deterrence in NATO that makes NATO so strong.
I just want to ask you finally about International Men's Day. You might have missed it. It's one of those things that gets nowhere near as much coverage as International Women's Day. And I just wondered, your reflections on it. We see the pressures online, we see white boys' attainment levels, we see lower life expectancy, suicide rates. Do we need to be focusing more on the specific challenges that men and boys face?
I think we do, and that's precisely why Wes Streeting, the health secretary, has launched the men's health strategy today. I think we do need to talk about it a lot more. I think especially if you talk about men's mental health, we've set out in the strategy more investment to talk about it, to start getting after that problem. But there's things that we can all do. It's not just the government setting out plans to enable better support. Being able to talk about how people feel, asking, are you okay, twice, not just once, and then getting an answer that's, keep pressing it. And we've seen in recent years, I think, a lot of progress made on this. I think in particular, I want to praise those football clubs that have used their social media presence to talk about how men's mental health amongst their own fan base is a really important part of getting that conversation going, because we know that the hardest point of accessing that sport is that first step. The ability to check in on your mate saying, are you okay? The ability to make sure that the support is available when someone can take that first step, or when someone can be encouraged to do so because someone's worried about them. We do need to talk more about this, and that's why I'm really glad that you've asked me that question, but also glad that the new strategies come out that will make progress towards getting to the type of support and the type of open conversation that we need around men's mental health in particular.
Yeah, I think it's a great answer. And I love what you say about asking, are you okay, twice? I think that's a really good thing for all of us to take away today in particular. Thanks very much for coming on the programme.
Thank you.
I'm amazed by it took him 4 times to say that we're safe. The first 3 times, yes, you can argue, you also want to mention, but there are new threats. But for a defence minister not to very clearly say, yes, we are safe, I don't think he's suggesting that we're not. I think it's, again, just very kind of questionable comms on we were discussing that report beforehand. It's going to be the first question. You put it to bed. Yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult to answer because in some ways, I guess, we aren't safe, right? So, yeah. Well, I still... Well, if we're genuinely not safe, then the government should drop absolutely everything that they're planning to fund. You drop everything and you make sure we're safe, first of all, if we're genuinely unsafe. So I still think the rhetoric on this is important, unless... I mean, the government says themselves, their number one priority is national security. So if you're not secure, you shouldn't be funding NHS, education or anything until you are. I think they've got to say we're safe, or else you're kind of opening a can of worms there. Anyway, we have to go to break, and when we come back, the Epstein files have been released or due to be released. A bill is going to the President's desk to sign in order to release them. And we're going to talk about it with Michael Shear, who's a senior correspondent at the New York Times.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club. 4 more years! Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back to Mornings with Ridge and Frost, your top stories. It's some good news for households as inflation fell to 3.6% in October. The drop is confirmation that inflation peaked at 3.8% in September, with analysts now expecting it to continue to fall.
He's going to shoot. Is that
You can see what it means. Scotland are heading to the Men's Football World Cup for the first time in 28 years after beating Denmark 4-2 at Hampton Park. Scotland went ahead twice inside 90 minutes, both times losing that lead before the winning goal was scored in stoppage time.
There's a warning from MPs that Britain is not ready to defend itself or its overseas territories from military attacks. A report by the Commons Defence Committee also found the UK is failing to meet its NATO obligations at a time when threats to Europe are high.
Now, of course, we've had the inflation figures this morning, how expensive everything is, the cost of living, and we've also now had the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, responding to it. She was talking to our correspondent, Gurpreet Narwan.
It's welcome that inflation has fallen from 3.8 to 3.6% in this month's data. But I recognise that inflation, the cost of living, is still a big burden on families right across the country. And that's why in the budget next week, I'll be taking targeted action to bring down inflation to address the cost of living.
And food price inflation on the up. It's been several months now since increases to employers' national insurance contributions have been in force. The evidence is quite clear. It's caused food prices to rise and it's hurt businesses' willingness to hire. Did you anticipate that this might happen, and do you regret that decision at all?
Food prices fell last month and they have risen this month. But I do recognise that there's more that we need to do to tackle the cost of living challenges. And that's why one of the 3 priorities in my budget next week is to tackle the cost of living, as well as to cut NHS waiting lists and cut government debt. There are 300,000 more jobs in the economy than there were at the beginning of this year. But of course, I want also to do more to help people back into work, which is why at the budget we'll be setting out more details of our youth guarantee to ensure that young people are in education, employment or training.
And just finally, there's been an unusual amount of market volatility in the run-up to the budget. Do you accept that this government's mixed messages on tax might have played a role in that? Is this a sensible way of handling market-sensitive information?
Well, leaks are not acceptable, but people only have to wait a week now until I deliver my budget on Wednesday, the 26th of November. The priorities of that budget will be to tackle the cost of living, to get NHS waiting lists down and to reduce the national debt. Those are the priorities of the British people, and they'll be my priorities as I go into the budget next week.
The Chancellor there talking to Gurpreet Narwan about that inflation data. I don't know if we've had those 3 targets for next week as explicitly as that yet. Tackle cost of living, cut NHS waiting lists and cut the debt. All quite broad and generic. And the only thing I'd take away from it is very clear that on the taxes, she doesn't want to put up anything that'll be inflationary, which would point us away from things like a VAT hike. But I think that was already priced in.
It's the 3 things that she said in the morning press conference speech. So I think it's kind of repeating the lines ahead of the budget.
Rachel Reeves there after inflation came in at 3.6% as expected. Now, it was a busy day in Washington yesterday and busy evening as well. Congress voted on the Epstein files and Trump invited the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman to the White House. Michael Shearer is here, the senior correspondent of the New York Times, and he's been covering the White House for many years. A real treat to have you with us. Michael, thanks so much for joining us.
Sure.
Let's start on the Epstein vote, first of all. I mean, obviously, the president hasn't signed it yet, but the expectation is that that's imminent. How quickly will we then see the files? And are we certain it is all the files now?
Well, so first of all, I think those are two good questions. The law directs the Justice Department to release the files, but it gives some exceptions. They allow for the redaction of some sensitive information, and it says that the Justice Department does not have to release files if they're part of an ongoing investigation, that doing so would harm. Of course, the president has already directed his attorney general to investigate Democrats as part of the Epstein files. So there's a lot of worry among those who want to see the files released that perhaps that's the loophole that will still, after all these years, keep some of those files hidden and not released.
From what we've seen so far, what is President Trump accused of or implied of having been complicit on? Where does he stand on that? And I guess the central question is, here it has led to the toppling of a prince, of an ambassador. Is there expectation that it will do the same for President Trump or really not?
Well, I think the big question is that we don't really know. What documents have been released that are not part of the Justice Department investigation, but that have been sort of out there in the public now for several weeks, have shown a much closer relationship even between Trump and Jeffrey Epstein than the president and his allies have ever acknowledged. And so the question is, what else is there? Is there a smoking gun that would suggest even further that the president knew about what Jeffrey Epstein was doing with these young women? Was there evidence that the president had any involvement with any of these young women? And I think you've seen a few of the other bold-faced names. Larry Summers, who was the president of Harvard, has seen his name appear and has now said that he's going to have to step back from some of his public engagements. And so there have been some of the kind of repercussions that we've seen here in England, but not to the level. Not to the level of here, and we'll just see if the files come out. There's a good chance that the president will have more to answer for.
Let's talk about Mohammed bin Salman in the White House yesterday. I guess the first question to set this up is, are we surprised to see this whole event happening, and indeed then many big business leaders and football stars, soccer stars being there?
I think that the not surprising part is the fact that the U.S. government would engage with the Saudi government and with Mohammed bin Salman. That's not really surprising. There's a sort of realpolitik part of this where, and frankly, Joe Biden essentially did the same, engaging with Saudi Arabia because it's in the U.S. interest to do so. What I think was surprising about it was the over-the-top celebratory nature. This wasn't just a working lunch between the two leaders of these countries. This was President Trump rolling out the red carpet, absolving Mohammed bin Salman of any responsibility for some of the things we know that his own Justice Department have said that he did. And that, I think, and the sort of pomp and circumstance of that dinner was pretty remarkable.
That was pretty remarkable, as was the clip we played earlier, as it relates to the ABC journalist. We've had moments like that over the last decade or so in covering the president, which you've done closer than many of us. How shocked were you by this example of it?
You know, I've been in the room when he's called myself and others fake news, and so in some ways it wasn't shocking. But it never seems to be the kind of thing that you would want to imagine a president of the United States doing, especially the way he seems to target women. And I know the ABC journalist in question. She's a lovely person, a good journalist. And so for the president of the United States, with everybody watching, to be targeting and talking to her like that, it's disturbing.
Michael Shearer, great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us from the New York Times.
Now, we're seeing time and again the devastation a one-punch attack can have. Lives can be ruined, can be snuffed out in an instant.
35-year-old Matt Jeffrey was one of those victims, punched and killed while on a stag do in Greece in 2019. But a Sky News investigation has revealed a new suspect in his death.
So, just to give you the detail of this, 2 men were convicted, but our Home Editor, Jason Farrell, has uncovered that one of the men might have been misidentified, and he's tracked down another man who could have evaded justice for more than 6 years. Just take a look.
I didn't see the punch, the sound that I heard will never leave me.
The 2 assailants walk off at first and then run off up the street.
People are walking free for 6 years that have done this. That doesn't make any sense.
Whoever that person is, there's a big problem that night.
Even though police had a video showing them exactly what happened, we will reveal how they made the simplest of blunders. Is that you? Is that you?
Well, Jason's here with us, and we're going to have more on this later on in the programme. But how long have you been working on this to get to this point with what we just got a taste of?
Since the beginning of the year. Yeah, we started with, we knew that there were 2 men who were still walking at large in the UK who had been convicted of this crime. They'd been arrested, they'd been charged, they'd gone through the court process, which had taken 4 years, and they were still walking free because there'd been no extradition. So that was the first sort of outrage, if you like. And then what we discovered was that actually, when you go through the court documents and you look at it, one of the men was saying, actually, it wasn't me, even though the police statement said that there'd been 2 confessions. And
that wasn't right then.
Well, it seemed wrong. I mean, either there'd been a language mess up, what had happened. I mean, it's a very confusing picture to start with, and but what's really interesting is we've got CCTV of the build-up of what happened, so we see a scrap take place in the club, and then actual video of the moment when Matt gets punched, and he gets punched twice. And it's very brutal. It's really, really brutal. And we haven't shown it in full, but it really does stick with you. You heard one of his friends there say, the sound will never leave me. Well, really, when someone hits the deck and it's that sound of them hitting the pavement, it really is it does stick with you. And then, I mean, just to give you one example, there's a man that you saw in that footage there walking away with white shorts on. The police were saying it was a guy who we saw a photograph of him in the club. He was wearing black shorts. So immediately it didn't look like that could be the right guy. So this investigation then goes through various pieces of evidence pointing towards someone else. And at the end of the film, we track that person down.
I mean, that moment that you see, the confrontation, I guess, between you and the guy in the van, I mean, it looks extraordinary for many reasons. I don't know, I don't want to give too much away. My question is, why did you first start looking at this? Did someone come to you? Did you? Yeah, how did you?
The first thing we did was we spoke to the family, actually.
So, did you just see the case and think that doesn't look right? Is that what happened?
We'd heard about the case going through the extradition, that there was an extradition logjam, if you like, and why hadn't these 2 people been extradited?
Yeah, I see.
The family had never really spoken about it. And when we went to see them and said, look, we're interested in this case, they actually said, well, actually, it's something we were starting to think we might go to the media about because, you know, it's been 6 years now, we haven't had closure. And the other part of this story is that the family had to pay for the lawyers to fly the witnesses out, and then they get to the courthouse and the 2 suspects haven't turned up. So, it's extraordinary fortitude from them, but really also an investigation into a probably flawed police investigation.
Yeah, well, certainly, the evidence points in one direction. And amazing that just by looking at the extradition documents, that something like this should just come up. I mean, that's kind of, I guess that's what journalism's all about. Jason, thank you very much indeed.
Great stuff, as always. Now, to come after the break, financial pressures are forcing hospices to cut services. We'll speak to the head of the Isabel Hospice. That's next. To find out exactly how bad things are.
Go ahead, back white jacket.
Deborah Haynes from Sky News. He called you Daddy earlier.
No, he did it very affectionate. Daddy, you're my daddy. Thank you.
Leicester is on its knees.
They've ripped the soul out of my factory and there's nothing left.
It is eerily quiet.
It's constantly on the brink of capacity.
There's overcrowding. It's not a new thing.
It's rough.
There's nothing to hide. Why aren't international journalists allowed in?
Are you worried about escalation?
Of course I'm worried about escalation, which is why my focus is on de-escalation.
The region, I think, is on edge because they are anticipating a retaliation.
Iran retaliates for the US attacks.
Founding principle of the alliance, that an attack on one is an attack on all.
Could Putin attack another NATO country within 5 years?
I'm David Blevins, one of Sky's US correspondents, based in Washington, D.C.
Conor, what did you say to the President? What did you say?
He's had a great meeting with him. He's a great man.
David Blevins from Sky News. Fire chiefs say that they're really stretched to the limit and running out of water. What have you got to say to that? Sky News in the UK, why do you think the President should intervene on Iran?
I think Iran acquiring a nuclear weapon is an acute threat to the national security of the United States.
Free wherever you get your news.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live.
I'm live in Jerusalem.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
The judge made it very clear that she could see no justifiable reason why Sakoulas wasn't here facing British justice.
I promised I would get him justice.
Sky News, get the full story first. It's legal to let go.
Set the speed and take the hands off.
I'm Lisa Dowd and I'm Sky's Midlands correspondent.
I'm Stephen Murphy and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.
The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks.
If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach. This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
Welcome back. Now, hospice care is, it's some of the most important care that anybody can ever be given, and it is probably coming at, the worst time in your life as well. So, given, of course, how tough things are financially for many of those providers, it's becoming too expensive to continue to provide the care that they want to. And of course, it's been made even harder given only 30% of hospice funding actually comes from the NHS, so that they're reliant completely, really, on charities and grants. Well, Helen Glenister is the Chief Executive of the Isabel Hospice. He is with us now. I'm so glad we're doing this story. Can I just say, first of all, so many of us have experienced the care that hospices provide. And, honestly, the worst point of your life, it's a lifeline. We know how bad end-of-life care is, and it is often like the kind of one slither of humanity that people get, right? Do you think it's a sector that's in crisis?
Well, an awful lot of hospices are having to make cuts, and we're an example of that. We've had to cut our Living Well services, which is all about helping people with life-limiting conditions, to give them the therapy support, wellbeing support, and able to give them the confidence to manage their condition in the time that is left for them. We're also having to cut our Compassionate Communities service, which is all about social networking and keeping people connected, and also our children's bereavement services, which is, if a child loses a member of the family, the impact on those children. So we've been providing bereavement support services, and none of these services are funded by the NHS. We have to raise money for all of them.
Look, we're talking about kids who are losing their mum or dad.
That's right.
We're talking about people who they may only have, 6 months to live, a year to live, making the most of that time. It couldn't be more important. Can I ask why? if you can just explain why things have got more difficult, because I know what I found quite sort of shocking of you in some ways is the fact you weren't exempt from the employer's national insurance rise. I mean, how much did that add to your hospice?
For us, it was an extra 220,000 that we had to suddenly find.
£220,000.
That's right.
Just out of nowhere, basically.
Absolutely, from the Chancellor's announcement last year that we needed to find. So that's an awful stress. And if you look at the hospices across the country, it's 34 million, that extra cost for hospices. But just for us, it was 220,000.
Wow. What's your message to the Chancellor ahead of the budget?
The message to the Chancellor is really think about hospices and also providing, you know, everybody dies, and it can be, if you've got a life-threatening condition, it can be, you know, really traumatic for people, very difficult time for the individual and for the family members. So think about funding fully specialist palliative care for all. Also, making sure that we have, you know, proper contracts with the NHS. At the moment, we get grants, and they may or may not go just up a tiny smidgen, just a little bit. And also, when the NHS increases the pay of staff, we have to find that money, because otherwise we'll lose our nurses, doctors and therapists. And then there's something about equity also across the country as well.
It's really so powerful to hear you speak like this. It's a really strong message to people. It's something that I'm very keen to continue to push on this programme. So thanks very much for coming today.
Thank you.
We've got lots more still to come. In the next hour, we'll be talking to Professor Green on International Men's Day. We're talking to Mother Pucker as well, and also looking forward to speaking to Gary Stevenson from Gary's Economics. Lots more still to come, and we'll also, which is actually what I'm most excited about, get to relive the ecstasy of Scotland's epic qualification for the World Cup at the top of the hour. I can watch that clip on repeat. We'll be right back. Don't go nowhere.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force.
It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Good morning. It is 8 o'clock and welcome to Mornings with Ridge and Frost.
With Sophie and Wilf, good morning from me as well. Lots to get to.
Could today's inflation figures signal a turning point for price rises in the UK? We'll bring you the latest data.
He's going to shoot. Is that
Epic stuff. The Tartan Army's American dream. Scotland's men beat Denmark to qualify for the stateside World Cup next year.
Subliminal! Scotland! We know how to do the hard way! Superb!
The bill to release the Epstein files passes through the United States Congress. Now it just needs the President's signature of approval.
The wife of Jamal Khashoggi says there's been zero justice for his death as Donald Trump defends the Saudi Crown Prince.
And it is International Men's Day. The government's launching a new men's health strategy to market, and the singer Professor Green will be joining us to talk about why we need to take mental health seriously.
And an extraordinary story. Sky News investigates a new suspect in the case of a man who was killed with one punch while on a stag do in Greece. A very good morning to you. A bit of, well, it says good news. Less bad news, I would say. Inflation fell to 3.6% in October. That's a drop from 3.8% the month before. But, of course, it's still significantly above the Bank of England target, which is 2%.
Does this mean there could be a turning point in price rises and the cost of living? Well, we heard from the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, in the last hour.
It's welcome that inflation has fallen from 3.8 to 3.6% in this month's data. But I recognise that inflation, the cost of living, is still a big burden on families right across the country. And that's why in the budget next week, I'll be taking targeted action to bring down inflation to address the cost of living.
And food price inflation on the up. It's been several months now since increases to employers' national insurance contributions have been in force. The evidence is quite clear. It's caused food prices to rise and it's hurt businesses' willingness to hire. Did you anticipate that this might happen, and do you regret that decision at all?
Food prices fell last month and they have risen this month. But I do recognise that there's more that we need to do to tackle the cost of living challenges.
Rachel Reeves then making it pretty clear that cost of living is something on the government's minds. It's a key priority for them ahead of the budget. We've also had the response from the Conservatives this morning too. This is the Shadow Chancellor, Mel Stride, who said inflation has been above target every single month since Labour's last budget, leaving working people worse off. If Labour had any backbone, they would adopt our £47 billion savings plan and our golden economic rule next week to ease inflationary pressures. Only the Conservatives have the leader with a backbone, the plan and the team to stabilise the public finances, reducing inflation and delivering a stronger economy.
Let's bring in Gurpreet. She's at Tesco's in West London, where we also saw the Chancellor earlier today. Gurpreet, what stands out for you in these numbers? The headline is it's fallen a bit since last month. What's underneath the surface?
Yeah, there's quite a lot underneath the surface, and there's a bit of a sting in the tail, actually, especially when it comes to food price inflation, which is relevant because I am in a Tesco in West London. Prices here are considerably higher, the price level, considerably higher than they were a few years ago. We know that food prices in particular, we've been on a big journey with food prices. They rose in the inflationary crisis that we had post-lockdown after the war in Ukraine. And since March, they've been on the up considerably, largely driven by the Chancellor's own policy of national insurance contribution increases. Supermarkets have been passing that on to consumers. And we've had data out today showing that food price inflation was up again by 4.9% in October. That was up from 4.5% the previous month. It actually fell the previous month. So as I said, a bit of a sting in the tail there. And policymakers will be really nervous about food price inflation, actually, because of all the types of inflation, food price inflation, when your grocery shop goes up, is the one that makes you really look around and go, oops, wow, like food prices and inflation in general is going up. The cost of living is going up. I better go to my employer and try and get a pay rise. And policymakers are anxious about that because it can fuel something called a wage price spiral, whereby prices are going up and then you go to your boss and ask for a pay rise and then prices go up even higher. So although the overall data today, headline rate of inflation falling to 3.6%, should give the Bank of England more confidence to cut interest rates next month, particularly as there are other underlying data points here on services inflation, which is a data point the bank looks really closely at. It gives you a sense of how underlying inflation is doing in the economy. That fell faster than expected. So we're anticipating that the bank will cut interest rates next month, but there are still warning signs within this data, particularly around food, that policymakers will have in the back of their mind before making their decision. And of course, all of this has added salience in the run-up to the budget. The Chancellor will be looking to grab on to any good news that she can find. She'll be pointing to falling inflation, but she might have to wait until after the budget for an interest rate cut.
Gurpreet, great stuff. Thanks so much for that, Gurpreet. No one there in a Tesco's, where prices, of course, do continue to rise.
Well, it was a night for the history books. For the first time since 1998, so nearly 3 decades, Scotland's men have qualified for the Football World Cup.
And it wasn't simple. In fact, it was epically dramatic because they needed to beat Denmark to qualify. They did go 2-0 up. Denmark then pegged them back to 2-2, but late in stoppage time, they came through, not just with 1 goal, but with 2 goals to get the victory.
And look, that victory that Wilfred was saying was even sweeter because it was in front of home fans at Hampden Park, where our correspondent Conor Gillies was. Let's see what he saw.
This is what a victory, a Scottish victory, looks like. A feeling that has been bottled for close to 3 decades.
What do you make of that?
No Scotland, no party.
Are you going to be booking your flights to America?
I sincerely hope so. I sincerely hope so. Oh, it's amazing. It's just...
What does this rank in terms of life events?
Probably just below our marriage.
What's your verdict on that?
I can't argue with that. That's it.
He's going to shoot.
Is that
The last time Scotland's men went to the World Cup was 1998. Most of these players were not even alive then. But now the wait for a rerun is finally over.
Oh my God, my heart was like all over the place. It took us through all sorts of emotions, but oh my God.
I'm 45 now. And never been to a World Cup, so here we go.
World Cup, so this will be my second.
For Scotland?
Yep, that's how you're into.
And are you going to go to America?
Well,
for a generation, hope has travelled hand in hand with heartbreak. But Scotland, right here at Hampden, have now rewritten the story. A victory for the nation and vindication for the squad.
Feels good. I said at the start of the campaign, I felt the pressure of the nation to try to get to World Cup. So immediately that falls off your shoulders and you feel a little bit better. But what a fantastic group of players. Never give up. I've said it for a long time now about how good they are and how determined they are to be good for their country. They showed that tonight. I couldn't be happier for my players. I couldn't be happier. It's fantastic. It feels great.
With practically the last kick of the ball to absolutely rubber stamp Scotland's place.
And so Scotland returns to the World Cup stage. This was the moment history finally turned in this country's favour. Conor Gillies, Sky News, at Hampden Park in Glasgow.
Epic stuff.
It's just like ecstasy, and it is worth just pausing to what an achievement this is and how historic it is. So back in the day, Scotland used to qualify quite a lot. So they made 5 consecutive World Cup appearances between 1974 and 1990, but then they failed to qualify since 1998. So it's nearly 3 decades.
Yeah, six World Cups in a row they haven't qualified for. I mean, it's just epic. And as we said earlier, the way it unfolded was pretty epic. So we've got all 4 of their goals. So they needed a win. By the way, this has been overlooked. 3 minutes in, Scott McTominay, what a goal that was. So they went ahead, then they got pegged back, then they went ahead again, 2-1, pegged back again, 2-2, until that goal. That was the crucial goal, deep into stoppage time from Kieran Tierney, and put them 3-2 ahead, and then they got that bonus goal as well to make it 4-2. We got those goals in quickly there.
Can I just say, I'm quite impressed. I think he's got a new career in Sky Sports commentary. That's very good.
I'd love it. It'd be good fun. Well, it's
I don't think you'd be able to keep your bias away though if Arsenal were playing. That's the only problem.
That is true.
Don't let him anywhere near Arsenal.
By the way,
matches.
I just think that was so fantastic. And watching the goals through with the commentary where you get the emotion, congrats. Congrats to everyone in Scotland this morning.
Now, China says it's got no interest in collecting intelligence from the UK's parliament. It's all after MI5 warned that Beijing is using spies who apparently are posing as headhunters on LinkedIn to try and steal low-value information. Now, China have said that it's all a load of rubbish. They've dismissed claims that intelligence personnel are trying to recruit British politicians.
Well, let's speak to our Asia correspondent, Helen Smith, who joins us now from Beijing. Helen, great, as always, to have you with us. So what's the take on this from there? I mean, I'm sure it's being denied vociferously, but talk us through the reaction.
Yeah, that's right. I think, despite the fact it's been denied, these types of incidents are damaging for the UK-China relationship. And I think this one will be so, particularly as it comes as part of a bit of a spate of these type of instances recently. Just to bring viewers up to date, the accusations, according to MI5, is that there was 2 LinkedIn accounts. And these 2 LinkedIn accounts, they say, were posing as headhunters, contacting influential people in public life, politicians, journalists, people who work in Parliament and so forth, and essentially trying to recruit them, trying to befriend them, asking them, according to job adverts, to be sort of experts or insiders or consultants. Perhaps it seems to potentially give information to the Chinese state through a series of others, perhaps. The Chinese government, as always, as is according to their playbook, absolutely vigorously deny this. But look, I think it's complicated given how many accusations like this there have been in recent months. And I put that exact point to Mao Ning, who is the spokesperson for the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs, just an hour or so ago. Have a listen to what she said. MI5 issued an official warning to British politicians about 2 LinkedIn accounts that it said were posing as headhunters, but were in fact operating on behalf of the Chinese Ministry of State Security. It's just the latest in a real string of similar accusations about alleged Chinese spying in the UK. Given that it's pretty widely acknowledged that all countries spy on each other, and given the sheer regularity of these type of accusations recently, is it not quite far-fetched and perhaps even more damaging to bilateral relations between China and the UK for China to continue to maintain that the UK are just making it all up? Thank you.
China has stated its position more than once. We firmly reject such vilification that has no factual basis and projects one's own mentality onto China. Judgment based on disinformation will only lead to the wrong path. China never interferes in the internal affairs of other countries and has no interest to collect so-called intelligence from the British Parliament.
Look, it is China's playbook to just completely deny accusations like this when they come around. But it is, of course, a pretty common understanding that China has a very sophisticated surveillance operation. Just here as journalists in Beijing, it is not unnormal to hear of diplomats and former diplomats, people who used to work here who have been approached by the Ministry of State Security. We hear about that all the time, actually. So, look, there's very likely that there might be some potential truth to these types of allegations. However, I think the significance really in this incident, it is about the thorniness that it reintroduces to the British-Chinese diplomatic relationship. There has been quite a few of these accusations in recent months, not least a big case last month that actually collapsed because the British government wouldn't supply sort of written evidence to say that China was officially an enemy or officially a threat to national security. And that was a big embarrassment and lots of criticism to the government about the fact that they were unwilling to take that step in order to sort of to pursue those prosecutions. So perhaps an attempt from the British government to look strong on the China issue ahead of other big decisions coming up, such as a very controversial new embassy for China in London, decision on that expected in the next few few weeks. But look, the Chinese don't take enormously kindly to these type of public accusations, and they don't like their bilateral relations to be played out in very public ways. So I think it does potentially bode for a thorny few months.
Helen, really interesting to hear. And also just to pick up on what you're saying from the kind of political perspective, because this is, I think Helen Ann's completely right to highlight that collapsed trial when the UK refused to give evidence to say that it was that China was a national security threat. This recent intervention has come from MI5. So MI5 were the ones who said, these two people are doing this on LinkedIn, this is an issue. And we know that MI5 were pretty unhappy about the government, not basically causing the collapse of this trial, if you like.
Well, and the other thing that's pending, of course, is whether or not they get permission to build this massive embassy in central London, which is a very politically toxic issue. And, of course, all while the Chagos Islands deal goes through as well.
MI5, for me, it feels like they are trying to get the awareness up of the national security threat of China.
Really, really interesting. And our thanks to Helen Ann, as always, there in Beijing.
Now, the campaign for transparency around the Jeffrey Epstein scandal reached a major milestone last night because the US Congress passed a bill which was going to force the release of files related to the convicted sex offender.
The bill will now head to Donald Trump's desk for him to sign, which the president has indicated he will do, despite his initial opposition to the legislation. James Matthews has the story for us.
This is who you're fighting for. This is who Congress is fighting for. This is who the House of Representatives are fighting for.
This was me at 14 years old. I was 16.
16.
They came to Capitol Hill with searing testimony, the centre of this story.
What's the message today, do you think?
It's going to be a powerful one.
To the President of the United States of America, who is not here today, I want to send a clear message to you. I am traumatized. I am not stupid.
You didn't just make a small dent. You made a monumental impact.
Survivors of Jeffrey Epstein told their stories against a shifting political backdrop. Listen to the friend turned enemy of Donald Trump, the MAGA loyalist he now calls traitor.
A traitor is an American that serves foreign countries and themselves. A patriot is an American that serves the United States of America and Americans like the women standing behind me.
On a landmark day at Congress, the president was confounded outside and in. This was the vote Donald Trump had long resisted. Republicans from his party backed a vote to release the Epstein files. First in the House, then by unanimous consent in the Senate.
Without objection, so ordered.
The Senate has now passed the Epstein bill as soon as it comes over from the House.
Across Washington, Donald Trump was welcoming Mohammed bin Salman, the Saudi crown prince. If the Epstein vote was something he didn't want to see, it was the question he didn't want to hear.
Mr. President, why wait for Congress to release the Epstein files? Why not just do it now?
You know, it's not the question that I mind, it's your attitude. You're a terrible person and a terrible reporter. As far as the Epstein files is, I have nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. I threw him out of my club many years ago because I thought he was a sick pervert.
Back on Capitol Hill, Donald Trump wasn't the only former Epstein associate in the frame. What do you say today to Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, the man formerly known as Prince Andrew?
I do think that Prince Andrew does need to come and testify at our oversight committee, and that can be bipartisan. But I share Thomas's view that the urgency that the British people have shown in getting justice needs to inspire an urgency here in America.
This was a significant step in the politics of justice. In this modern American scandal, it won't be the last. James Matthews, Sky News, in Washington.
Well, staying in the US and ahead of that vote on the Epstein files, President Trump welcomed the Saudi Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman, to the White House for a visit.
While in the Oval Office, Prince Mohammed bin Salman was asked by a journalist about claims that he ordered the murder of the journalist and Saudi critic Jamal Khashoggi.
The Washington Post reporter was killed inside the Saudi consulate in Istanbul in 2018. The CIA concluded that the prince had approved the killing, something he's always denied. And we want to bring you this exchange. This is President Trump's response to a question he was posed on that topic by an ABC journalist.
Your Royal Highness, the U.S. intelligence concluded that you orchestrated the brutal murder of a journalist. 9/11 families are furious that you are here in the Oval Office. Why should Americans trust you? And the same to you, Mr. President.
Now, who are you with?
I'm with ABC News, sir.
You're with who?
ABC News, sir.
Fake news. ABC fake news. One of the worst in the business. But I'll answer your question. As far as this gentleman is concerned, he's done a phenomenal job. You're mentioning somebody that was extremely controversial. A lot of people didn't like that gentleman that you're talking about. Whether you like him or didn't like him, things happen. But he knew nothing about it, and we can leave it at that. You don't have to embarrass our guest by asking a question like that.
About the journalist, it's really painful to hear, anyone that been losing his life for, no real purpose or nothing illegal way, and it's been painful for us in Saudi Arabia. We've did all the right steps of investigation, etc., in Saudi Arabia, and we've improved our system to be sure that nothing happened like that, and it's painful and it's a huge mistake, and we are doing our best that this doesn't happen again.
Unbelievable, to be honest. Donald Trump there responding to that question from a journalist. It's worth pointing out that it was the CIA, i.e., American intelligence agencies, that said the Crown Prince had ordered the killing of Jamal Khashoggi, something he obviously denies, but that was the guy sitting next to Donald Trump at the time. And also that was during Donald Trump's term as well.
Yeah, I mean, your jaw's on the floor based on that exchange with a journalist, and it's just sort of absolutely shocking. As you said, the kind of U-turn to where we were in 2018 is all the more surprising, given that it wasn't just a sort of, oh, that was the view of Biden, this is the view of Trump. It was during Trump's first term, and it filtered through, by the way, at the time, 2018, 2019, all of America's business leaders had to cancel going to Mohammed bin Salman's conference, the so-called Davos in the desert. So it's a massive U-turn from then. That said, shocking as that clip was that we just saw, the very fact that this whole state visit was happening, and we've got pictures of who was there last night, from Elon Musk to Tim Cook of Apple to Cristiano Ronaldo, we knew this was coming. And I don't think we're that surprised that the rest of it was all happening, because a lot of time has passed, and I'm afraid us too, the Western world has brought him back in from the cold, quite significantly so. Even Joe Biden did, actually. I don't know if you remember that kind of high-profile nature.
Yeah, it's not just
they
just
did a
Donald
fist
Trump.
pump together rather than a handshake, and that was a big moment that Biden got criticised for at the time. Yeah, like it or not, I don't think it's a surprise that this big state visit happened, and it happened obviously with a lot of red carpet and gold and the usual.
Well, we were talking here, obviously, about the kind of change in world order, if you like, different threats, different countries, different alliances. It feels like we're living through one of those times where everything is changing. And that brings new challenges, because a group of MPs are also warning the UK is not prepared to defend itself from a military attack and may actually be failing to meet its NATO obligations.
Well, the year-long survey found that plans to fix the UK's defence problem were moving at a glacial pace. And this was something, of course, we discussed earlier with the Defence Minister, Luke Pollard.
We're facing new threats, new challenges from our adversaries who are increasingly working together, that we need to learn the lessons from Ukraine. That means retiring old equipment, bringing new equipment that would deter and defeat aggression if necessary. And it also means moving at pace to end the hollowing out and underfunding of our armed forces that we saw under the last government. That's why, since we've taken office, we've increased defence spending, £5 billion extra in our budget this year. Every year ahead of us, the next decade, increasing amounts of defence spending, a desire and a commitment to spend more of that money with British businesses and to refill our stockpiles.
The question that I asked you was, are we safe?
Well, we live in a new era of threats, so there are new threats.
No, stop. I'm sorry, I'm going to
UK.
come in. We live in a new era of threats. I don't understand what that means, genuinely. I think it's meaningless. Are we safe?
the men and women of our armed forces keep us safe. But because we live in a new era of threat, which means there are new threats facing the United Kingdom, which we set out very clearly in the Defence Review, that means we have to do things differently.
We are safe. We are safe. That's the answer.
Well, we are safe, but we are facing new threats. Both of those can be true at the same time, Sophie.
I thought that was fascinating, that exchange. And I'm interested, Rob, on your take on that, because we spoke last hour about what's in this report. There's parts of it we're not even surprised by. You know, we know what's been hollowed out and how threats have changed. But do we not always expect a defence minister or any government minister, when asked bluntly, are we safe, to very quickly say, yes, of course we're safe, but we need more funding for this and we need to adapt the work we're doing?
Yeah, it's unnerving to have too many caveats before the kind of big
four attempts.
Yeah, quite. The difficulty is, when you go through bits of this report that's from this Defence Committee, they are sort of putting out ample evidence, testimony from experts that are, you know, not in charge at the government, but are very, very well versed and experienced in this, essentially saying that, no, they don't think we are safe. And the reason is because there are these new threats, there's new change in essentially how the world is put together that we hear ministers talk about a lot. But what they are saying is that the capability to repel these new threats is not moving as fast as the threats are emerging, essentially, and that we are still kind of living with the idea of the so-called post-Cold War peace dividend, where we can spend less on defence and more on things like health and welfare because the world is a safer place.
Can I play devil's advocate here?
Oh, please.
We have just had a massive bump in defence spending at a time when we are having, you know, we're letting paedophiles out of jail early. We are, you know, if you're looking at tax rates, you know, we're putting up taxes massively. We are spending quite a lot of money on defence already.
But haven't we gone from 2.3 to 2.5?
2.5 is the aim for 2027.
So we're not even there yet?
We're not there yet.
Yeah, but if you look into what the government has prioritised in terms of money...
I mean, look, it's an awful lot of money. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, it is, but I mean...
Pound terms.
Yeah.
But it's not a drastic... I guess my point is to caveat it against this 5% by 2030, which is going to include roads that could possibly connect a military base, you know...
Yeah, what we'll say there is basically they're loosening the definition of military spending so that they can put a load of stuff in the target, although other countries do that too.
Oh, completely. But I mean, I think that the question, which I think is very apt, is in pound terms, billions and billions of pounds are going on defence. Is it actually getting us ready for war footing? No, is what this report says.
And I think it's about, you know, is it a big number? You look back to sort of 1970 and we were spending over 5% of GDP on defence. If the rhetoric is that we are back in a world where we are facing threats equivalent to those that we faced in the Cold War, then the point that many defence analysts say is that we should be putting our money where our mouth is. You know, this is a point that I hear our colleague Deb Haynes make all the time when she's talking about this, and she's much more well-versed than me on it. But if you don't have national security, if you don't have defence security, then you don't have anything.
It's always good to talk to you, Rob. We always get in trouble for running over on time when Rob's on the set.
Sorry.
No, but it's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Which was not Sophie saying you go on too long.
No, it's interesting.
We have too many questions for you.
Yeah, his interest is really good. Thanks very much,
Get to the break. Get to the break. They're saying we're going to go to the break. We'll be back to speak to Mother Pucker, the influencer. Anna Whitehouse is next.
we are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club.
4 more years!
Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, welcome back. The news this morning. It is some good news for households, although I guess it's relatively limited. Inflation fell to 3.6% in October, which means prices are still going up, but not quite as quickly as we were expecting. Inflation peaked at 3.8% in September. Analysts now expecting it to continue to fall.
He's going to shoot. Is that good?
Can watch it again and again. Scotland heading to the Men's World Cup finals for the first time in 28 years after beating Denmark 4-2 at Hampden Park. They went ahead twice to be pegged back twice, and then they got the winner in stoppage time.
There's a warning from MPs that Britain is not ready to defend itself or its overseas territories from military attacks. A report by the Commons Defence Committee also found the UK is failing to meet its NATO obligations at a time when threats to Europe are high.
To something we're all probably guilty of now, and that's eating ultra-processed foods. Experts who've written in the Lancet medical journal say incorporating these foods into diets is leading to a chronic disease pandemic.
Well, Sky's Adele Robinson has more on this. Adele, this is such an interesting and important story. What's the report saying?
Well, this is, as you say, from the Lancet Journal, one of the most respected worldwide journals. And effectively, it is drawing attention to the fact that UPFs, as they're known, ultra-processed foods, are not just bad, actually, and linked to multiple chronic health diseases. As you said, they're the leading driver, they say, of a chronic disease pandemic. But also, at the heart of this paper, is a commentary, really, on the political and economic reasons for this. And they say this, that the food industry's growing power has reshaped diets, our diets, for profit and not health. They're even going as far as to compare the current stage of the UPF, the ultra-processed food policy, to where tobacco control was decades ago. And you can understand that because, as we saw in the 80s and 90s, it wasn't until actually the 2000s we saw major policy consequences. But that concern over the whole early warning signs versus not enough evidence yet argument. And so there is a suggestion as well from these 43 scientists and researchers from all over the world that there's been very little political appetite to regulate the industry meaningfully. And they argue, actually, that the main barrier to protect health, they say, is driven by powerful corporate lobbying and global political interference. It is important, though, to state that off the back of this paper, there have been other independent experts coming forward saying that, urging caution effectively, and saying that while they point out that many studies do show associations between ultra-processed foods, crisps, ice cream, just a few examples, and poor health, causation isn't proven across the board, effectively saying that not all UPFs are equal and some may have little to no impact on disease risk. The industry bodies have also reacted, saying that, they reject the idea that ultra-processed foods are driving a health crisis. The Food and Drink Federation, for example, has said that manufacturers have already cut salt, sugar and and calories significant in recent years. But this paper also says that voluntary reformulation, which is where companies have taken out fat, they've taken out sugar, but they've replaced them with additives or sweeteners, has not halted rising obesity. So I think the takeaway from all of this is that there is growing scientific concern, adding to a huge body already of calls as well for stronger regulation and action now. But the evidence is still being contested, I think, across the board. Everyone is agreeing that more studies need to happen and there needs to be more consensus. But the debate, I think, over how to define and treat UPFs is far from settled.
Adele, great stuff. Thanks so much.
Right, so we want to turn now to an issue that affects so many of us, parental leave. So the balance of work and family life is at the heart of so much, with childcare costs, of course, at a record high, and there is a real role for government in here as well. Someone leading the charge on a campaign to improve parental leave and flexible working is Anna Whitehouse, also known as Mother Pucker. I'm sure lots of you might be familiar with her from her sort of social media Mother Pucker accounts. Great to have you here with us.
Hi.
How would you describe the state of support for parents in the UK at the minute?
Support for parents right now, I think we are just a generation of burnt out, utterly exhausted, tapped out, financially drained humans trying to get through the day. I feel like it's not just parental leave. There's a trifecta of childcare costs, parental leave, inflexible working, and we're right in the middle of it. Like, it's got a vice-like grip around us, and I think we can't even come up for air to shout about the issues. We just have to keep going. So I think right now there's probably a lot of parents looking right now here going, what do I do? How do I get through this? What support do I have, and what's the legality around that?
Yeah, this is the thing as well, because we've got the budget coming up, obviously, and this is so political, because it does feel like there is, and I'm sure lots of different people say this, but like, I do think for parents and, you know, people in the kind of 30s and 40s, it can often feel like you're at the brunt of everything. You've got really high childcare costs, you've probably got a massive mortgage that's gone up in the most recent years, and you might be about to be hit even more by the budget because you're kind of a working person, right? What's your kind of message, I guess, for the Chancellor?
I mean, to be honest, the most pertinent thing is the House of Lords report that came out, which I think is really important to kind of leverage, because currently we've got billionaire CEOs telling everybody to get back to the office 5 days a week. And that's all very well when you've got wraparound childcare, a helicopter that can take you from A to B, and a private chef. But for the rest of us, like, we are in that kind of vice-like grip, and we need... the report was called Is Working From Home Working? Do you know what? Yes, it is. That was the resounding response. So for me, to the Chancellor, is listen to the black and white reports that are out there. My Flexonomics report, which details that if you implement flexible working, effective parental leave, childcare costs are reduced, you can improve the economy by 55 billion. It's not about doing something for mummies. This is about doing something for the economy.
It's really interesting, though, in terms of, I guess, the budget next week, because almost some of that would be for a different department if they're going to force companies to allow more flexible working and stuff. In terms of what we get at the moment in terms of parental leave and in terms of childcare cost benefits, are there things you'd like to see changed in the short term there that could make a big difference as well?
I think the big one would be for dads to be able to be afforded 6 weeks paternity leave over 2 weeks. I don't know about you, but that 2-week period, we've spoken about it before,
that's true.
where you are on the cusp of maybe postnatal depression as a mother and your partner goes back to work at that juncture, that is costing the NHS in antidepressants, anxiety meds. So I think my plea is for that parental leave for dads to be fully recognised.
It's a really important point as well. It's International Men's Day today, right? So we're kind of talking about some of these male issues as well. And it really feels to me like talking about parents and not just meaning automatically mums, but also dads, many of them whom are also juggling with exactly the same kind of thing. It feels like it's such an important thing to do.
Enable dads to hold the woman who's holding the baby. Like, it's that simple. It's not just about women.
To hold the baby?
Just to hold the baby, yeah. Hold us all. We need more support.
Do you feel like this government listens to some of these messages? I guess, has it got much worse in the last couple of months or years, or has this been something that you've felt all of these problems for a decade?
Look, the right words are being said. Whether that translates to action and change is to be waited upon. I think that the right words are there. I didn't think the words flexible working bill would be in print, 10 years ago when I started. But right now, where childcare costs it's a bit like somebody said, right, let's build a motorway, let's get the M25 going, but they've only built a certain amount, so you can't get from A to B. So it's all very well saying the words, but it's underfunded, so it's not working. So it's hot air right now.
Thanks for coming on. I know you're kind of juggling an awful lot of stuff as well, so I'm sure the kind of
somewhere
8:30 a.m. slot for the programme is like another juggle for you to fit into your day. So we appreciate you for doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Anna Whitehouse, also known as Mother Pucker there. Now, over the past few weeks, we've been bringing you our investigation into Nonita, the young girl who died after being failed by the care system.
Just to remind you what happened, Nonita was only 18 when she took her own life after being failed by everybody who was supposed to look after her, particularly, though, what's known in the care system as her corporate parent, which was Barnet Council. Now, it's since emerged that 2 more care leavers, who were both 18 as well, also died while they were in the care of the council, and that's since Nonita's death.
Well, when it's raised on a platform like this, the stories by Nick Martin get noticed, and Barnet Council sat down with Nick to explain what happened from their point of view. A warning, this does contain references to suicide.
If they had told us, we would immediately have asked what happened, whose fault was it, because that's unfortunately the question that everybody does ask. What have we learned, and are we doing it better now? And that's why we refer to a toxic culture of secrecy and cover-up, because it may all be fine, it may not. But how are we supposed to know? What's happened has happened, and somebody needs to be held accountable, which is why we have asked for the resignations of the leader of the council and the cabinet member for family-friendly Barnet, as they like to call it.
Well, let's talk to you.
I think we played the wrong grab. We should just mention that, by the way. But anyway.
Yeah, Nick, what happened when you spoke to Barnet?
So we were asking Barnet Council for an interview to talk over the issues that the Nonita film raised since about July, but they refused our repeated requests for an interview. Now, as we were talking last week and as the film went live, the Chief Executive of Barnet Council wrote to all councillors telling them that this film was coming. And for the vast majority of those councillors, bar about 2, nobody had a clue who Nonita was on the council. Bearing in mind, everyone is a corporate parent at that council. So it came as quite a concern to hear Nonita's story, because Nonita's case had not been discussed within the council broadly. It had been confined to a few committees. There'd been no scrutiny, no public debate, no announcement of it. And subsequently, there's now an emergency meeting carded for December the 2nd. So that had put a lot of pressure on Barnet Council. So they agreed to sit down with me yesterday and they apologised. They said that they would be better at scrutinising in the future. But it also emerged that in the year after Nonita's death, 2 other care leavers, also 18, died. Now, that's 3 18-year-old care leavers in the space of 13 months, which is a huge concern.
3 in 18 months?
3 in 13 months, so my
months.
apologies, yeah.
That's extraordinary.
And there are inquests for these other 2 young people who are only known as young person E and young person R at the moment, although we are pushing the council to tell us a bit more about them. Now, it's important to say that we're talking about Barnet Council and we're interviewing Barnet Council leaders, but these are issues that affect all councils who are corporate parents, and I think it gives us quite a grim glimpse into how the lives and deaths of children in care are discussed, and a lot of these discussions are behind closed doors. And if councils can't be open about what went wrong and do that quickly, then you run the risk of not learning quickly enough and things start to go wrong.
That's what I was going to ask about. I mean, is this because of something along the lines of gross negligence by individuals, or is it because the system itself is impossible to get right, because the funding isn't there, because the workload is too high? I mean, step back from Barnet specifically on this. What's your kind of snapshot take on that?
My feeling is that the lives of children in care are shrouded in secrecy. Now, some of that is for very good reason. They are vulnerable children, their lives are complicated, there is a lot of issues around them. But I think when a child dies in the care of the state, and nobody apart from some senior councillors and some senior officers know about that in a particular council, And no doubt they're having very worthwhile conversations in those small meetings. But if we don't have scrutiny, public debate, and we don't openly earn lessons quick enough, then that could put children at risk who are also in the system. And if we think about that, Nanita died in December 2023, and in Barnet alone, we had another 2 die within a year. Yeah. Now, you know, we've got to ask some big questions about how we scrutinise the lives and deaths of children in care.
The thing that just gets me repeatedly about the story and the journalism you've done is, if you're a parent, you know everything about your child, right? You know what winds them up, you know what food they like, you know what's their favourite TV show. And the fact that the kind of parent of these children, they don't know anything about them. And we haven't got a picture of Nanita. You know, haven't got a picture to show you of her. It's heartbreaking and good to see that you have finally managed to get some answers out of Barnet Council as well. Nick, thank you very much indeed.
If you've been affected by any of the issues raised in the story, do remember you can always contact the Samaritans 116 123 or joe@samaritans.org. And if you scan the QR code on your screen right now, you can watch more of Nick's reporting on Nanita, a girl unseen.
Coming up, we are talking a bit more about men's health on this International Men's Day. We know, of course, some of the challenges. After the break, we're going to be joined by the musician, Professor Green, to talk about a new plan to try and tackle men's health.
Go ahead, back white jacket.
Deborah Haynes from Sky News. He called you Daddy earlier.
No, he did it very affectionately. Daddy, you're my daddy.
Thank you. Leicester is on its knees.
They've ripped the soul out of my factory and there's nothing left.
It is eerily quiet.
It's constantly on the brink of capacity.
There's overcrowding. It's not a new thing.
It's rough.
There's nothing to hide. Why aren't international journalists allowed in?
Are you worried about escalation?
Of course I'm worried about escalation, which is why my focus is on de-escalation.
The region, I think, is on edge because they are anticipating a retaliation.
Iran retaliates for the US attacks.
Founding principle of the alliance, that an attack on one is an attack on all.
Could Putin attack another NATO country within 5 years?
I'm David Blevins, one of Sky's US correspondents, based in Washington, D.C.
Conor, what did you say to the President? What did you say?
He's had a great meeting with him. He's a great man.
David Blevins from Sky News. Fire chiefs say that they're really stretched to the limit and running out of water. What have you got to say to that?
Sky News in the UK. Why do you think the President should intervene on Iran?
I think Iran acquiring a nuclear weapon is an acute threat to the national security of the United States.
Free wherever you get your news.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live.
I'm live in Jerusalem.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
The judge made it very clear that she could see no justifiable reason why Sakoulas wasn't here facing British justice.
I promised I would get him justice.
Sky News, get the full story first. It's legal to let go.
Set the speed and take the hands off.
I'm Lisa Dowd and I'm Sky's Midlands correspondent.
I'm Stephen Murphy and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin. The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks. If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach. This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
Welcome back. It's an important day today and one that looks at an issue that doesn't really get enough attention.
So the government is today launching its first ever men's health strategy, which slightly blows my mind that it is the first ever. It covers both physical and mental health. Because 1 in 3 men in the UK have either a physical or a mental health condition.
That number is too high, and we've got two great people here to talk about it with us. Stephen Manderson, known, of course, as Professor Green to many, and Amy O'Connor, who's the policy lead at Movember and here in studio. A very good morning to you both. Thank you so much for joining us. And Amy, we just chatted. I mean, we could have used a number of statistics to highlight why all of this is so important, but actually the one that I would have picked is that suicide is the biggest killer of men under 35 in this country, and it's one of the biggest killers of men under 50, and 3/4 of all suicide are men. I mean, these statistics are terrifying.
Yeah, they never continue to not be shocking. Simply put, too many men are dying too young through suicide, but also conditions that are preventable, looking at cardiovascular disease, men not engaging in healthcare services not working for men, and we're seeing this rate of premature mortality that we need to turn the tide on. And that's why we're welcoming today this historic men's health strategy that people across men's health have been calling for many, many years.
You're a big campaigner on some of this stuff, aren't you? On mental health, on men speaking about things more openly, on helping, you know, other guys. Just talk me through a bit about why that is.
My father took his own life, which was obviously quite a seismic event in my life. I was 24, and you know, he was. I turned the age he was when he took his own life next week, 42, which is way too young. And I think a lot of it stems from, for all the work I've done in and around it, all the conversations I've had, you know, it stems from men largely not being able to communicate how they feel and not being able to sit with the feelings that they have. And there's quite a steep arc into secondary emotions, you know, hurt, anger, sadness, anger. It becomes almost a defence mechanism. And it doesn't allow for us to really deal with anything that's happening internally. And I think there's a real detachment from self. And I think men probably realise that at this age. You know, we call it a midlife crisis. It can be passage if we deal with it well and ascend into a more authentic adulthood. But men suffer and they don't engage in services until a point of crisis. And we need to fix that. We need to create early access points to aid early prevention. And we need to do that in a way that men can listen to, hear, understand, and want to engage with. Because if we don't talk to men how they best hear things, we're not going to engage them in these services.
It's amazing the statistics on suicide are so tilted, specifically to men over women. Do you think men are more lonely than women? I mean, where does that come from, do you think?
I think it comes from the detachment. You know, there's a difference between, you know, you look at solitude and isolation. They're seemingly the same thing, but they're not. They're very different. Solitude is when you are at peace with self, and that might sound hippy-dippy and airy-fairy, but isolation is when you are removed from everything that creates healthy environment, community. You know, these things are lacking, and we're becoming ever more detached and disconnected.
Can I ask, if you're happy to answer, in the wake of your dad's death, did you feel like you had people you could talk to then?
I didn't know what to say. You know, I was really lucky in that I had an outlet in music, but it hasn't meant that I've been absolved of all my issues. And I think all too often the problem is, as far as our society, there's systemic failure because these issues are born so early on. You know, young boys are being failed. You know, especially boys from disadvantaged backgrounds. They are overrepresented in every single language, negative statistic. That needs looking at. So, you know, the men's health strategy is incredible to get over the line, and the fact that West Streeting has said that he's going to do something and has got it done is incredible. It needs to be cross-departmental. This needs to be about boys as much as it does men.
Amy, tell us more about Movember, because some people... when did it start? It's been going so successfully for so long, but it has evolved as well to really cover these areas that we're talking about, having started in a more focused area.
Yeah, so Movember came about in Australia in 2003. originally in prostate cancer, but now working prostate cancer, testicular cancer, men's mental health, but also doing a lot more work in the advocacy world and looking at how do we reach men with healthcare messages, how do we advocate for policy solutions, so government investing in men's health, and how do we make services work for men. It takes a lot for a guy to overcome all of the gender norms, to ask for help and go to the doctor, and when they get there, we're failing them too often. So when we're looking through the men's health strategy and we see investment in community programmes, there are fantastic community programmes up and down the country, men's sheds, outreach programmes, talk clubs. Investment in those type of programmes is what we're advocating for, as well as training for clinicians, training for doctors so they can better communicate with men, like Stephen says, in the language that they use, and interventions through sport. So the men's health strategy announced a fantastic partnership with the Premier League. We've talked about Movember. We were founded in a bar. We do work in sports clubs. There are men growing moustaches up and down the country now.
This is your chance to pitch for him to get the moustache.
I think he would look fantastic with a moustache. I think most men do.
If Stephen had also, shaved the bottom part, then maybe I could have matched up.
Well, I did trim it, but it's caught back up. So
it doesn't look that trimmed, I'll be honest.
I don't actually have to shave. I just drive at 60 and stick my head out the window. I still can't grow a beard.
Is the official thing of November you're meant to start on the 1st of November? Or can you, because it's a bit embarrassing otherwise, it's just going to be a bit half-hearted.
You can shave down on the last day of October, the first day of November, and grow that tash out all month.
There you go.
Keep clean shaven elsewhere. My husband's got a lovely little ginger mo coming through that the whole family are appreciating. But there's other things people are doing as well. I'm doing a cold water swim challenge. People are running marathons. And it is because people have this walking, talking billboard of a moustache, or they're doing these incredible challenges, that has meant people like West Streeting can see that people care about men's health and they want change. So it is a big thanks to...
Thank you both for joining us. We're out of time, I'm afraid. Amy, Stephen, it's been a pleasure. We really appreciate it. We're going to take a quick break here on Mornings with Ridge and Frost. We'll be right back.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force.
It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Good morning, it's 9 o'clock. Welcome to Mornings with Ridge and Frost.
We're Sophy and Wilf. Good morning from me as well.
Could today's inflation data signal a turning point for price rises in the UK? We'll break it down for you.
He's going to shoot.
Look at that. The Tartan Army's American dream. Scotland's men beat Denmark to qualify for their first World Cup in 28 years.
Subliminal! Scotland! We know how to do the hard way! Superb!
The bill to release the Epstein files passes through the United States Congress. Now it just needs the president's signature of approval.
The wife of the Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi says there's been zero justice for his death as Donald Trump defends the Saudi crown prince.
Also this hour, we'll speak to the millionaires trying to convince the Chancellor to hit them with higher taxes in the coming budget.
And an extraordinary story. Sky News investigates a new suspect in the case of a man who was killed with a single punch while on a stag do in Zante. Good morning. Well, we're starting with a story that affects every single one of us. How much we're paying for things, the cost of living, and the rate at which UK prices are rising has fallen to the lowest level since June.
Official figures show inflation fell to 3.6% in October, which confirms that it peaked at 3.8% the month before. If it continues to fall from here, so I guess it doesn't confirm that it's peaked.
Might go back up again.
Might go back up again, although it's
not
expected to.
So the Chancellor, of course, has been talking about this. She's been setting out the cost of living as one of her main priorities ahead of the budget, and she spoke in a supermarket.
It's welcome that inflation has fallen from 3.8 to 3.6% in this month's data. But I recognise that inflation, the cost of living, is still a big burden on families right across the country. And that's why in the budget next week, I'll be taking targeted action to bring down inflation to address the cost of living.
And food price inflation on the up. It's been several months now since increases to employers' national insurance contributions have been in force. The evidence is quite clear. It's caused food prices to rise and it's hurt businesses' willingness to hire. Did you anticipate that this might happen, and do you regret that decision at all?
Food prices fell last month and they have risen this month. But I do recognise that there's more that we need to do to tackle the cost of living challenges.
Chancellor speaking an hour or so ago there. The Shadow Chancellor, Mel Stride, has said inflation has been above target every single month since Labour's last budget, leaving working people worse off. If Labour had any backbone, they would adopt our £47 billion savings plan and our golden economic rule next week to ease inflationary pressures. Only the Conservatives have the leader with the backbone, the plan and the team to stabilise the public finances, reducing inflation and delivering a stronger economy. So this data, Sophie, as we said, 3.6% was the expectation. Last month was 3.8%. It is expected, just based on what you compare it to the year before, that it should steadily improve from here. So that's all less bad news. But, 3.6% is still high. It's still a long way above the 2% target. Core inflation, when you strip out food and energy, was 3.4%. Services inflation was 4.6%, so still pretty high.
Yeah.
It has led to a slight increase in the probability of a rate cut in December. But even that is actually quite surprising. In any normal time, you would wonder if you get rate cuts when you're so far above that 2% inflation target. But we shall see when December comes about with that rate cut hike. And of course, the bank won't be making a decision until then, not least because the biggest swing factor is to come next week. And some of the measures that the Chancellor will do or not do will influence what the bank then does afterwards.
Now to defence, because a group of MPs are warning the UK is not prepared to defend itself from a military attack and actually might be failing to meet its NATO obligations.
Well, the year-long survey found that plans to fix the UK's defence problem were moving at a glacial pace. Here is the Defence Minister, Luke Pollard.
We're facing new threats, new challenges from our adversaries who are increasingly working together, that we need to learn the lessons from Ukraine. That means retiring old equipment, bringing new equipment that would deter and defeat aggression if necessary. And it also means moving at pace to end the hollowing out and underfunding of our armed forces that we saw under the last government. That's why, since we've taken office, we've increased defence spending, £5 billion extra in our budget this year. Every year ahead of us for the next decade, increasing amounts of defence spending, a desire and a commitment to spend more of that money with British businesses and to refill our stockpiles.
The question that I asked you was, are we safe?
Well, we live in a new era of threats, so there are new threats.
No, stop. I'm sorry,
the
I'm going to come in. I'm going to come in. We live in a new era of threats. I don't understand what that means, genuinely. I think it's meaningless. Are we safe?
The men and women of our armed forces keep us safe. But because we live in a new era of threat, which means there are new threats facing the United Kingdom, which we set out very clearly in the Defence Review, that means we have to do things differently.
We are safe. We are safe. That's the answer.
Well, we are safe, but we are facing new threats. Both of those can be true at the same time, Sophie.
Well, let's chat to Rob, who's here to talk through this story with us. Rob, you've been poring through the Defence Committee report. What's their answer to that question? Are we safe?
Well, I mean, the headline of it is that there is no plan for the UK to defend itself, and that they question whether the UK is failing to meet its Article 3 requirements under NATO to have the capacity to basically repel an attack. So, look, in that context, that doesn't sound like a definition of safe. There's a pretty anxiety-inducing quote in there as well from Lord Robertson, the author of the Strategic Defence Review that the government published earlier in the year, also an ex-NATO Secretary-General, where he said people thought they were safe in eastern Ukraine and very suddenly they were not. We are not safe, is what he told the committee. In terms of the why, well, they say there's a lot of big language, as we heard there from Luke Pollard, around the new threats that we face, the world we live in now, and how it's more dangerous than at any point since the Cold War. But the committee's basically saying that the action is not matching up to those words, that the planning has not got in, that there's not enough engagement with the public around what it means to live in a climate where we are less safe, where the chance of war is higher and the trade-offs that involves. And then the practical issues around capacity, especially around air defence, around industry, defence industry. And that's something John Healey will be talking about today. He's announcing these 13 new munitions factories, or sites for munitions factories, and sort of trying to link together the difficulties and the threats that we face now, and saying, well, look, this can be an opportunity because we have to kind of reinvigorate the defence industry, and that can start to create jobs. But look, the message that is coming from this report, glacial pace, is what they say. So it doesn't instill you with confidence.
No, it doesn't.
Rob, great stuff as always. Thanks so much, Rob Powell. Now, this is properly epic. I haven't lost the thrill of this story all morning, even though we've done it quite a few times. But Scotland have qualified for the World Cup finals for the first time this century. They failed to qualify for the last 6.
Yeah, it's the first time in 28 years that Scotland are going to the Men's World Cup. And it was an absolute thriller because they were 2 goals ahead. That then went back to 2-2, but then some kind of stoppage time, last-minute kind of rescue. They had 2 brilliant stoppage times goals, and they're through.
And this report from Conor Gillis captures all of the ecstasy, the celebration of the evening up in Scotland.
This is what a victory, a Scottish victory, looks like. A feeling that has been bottled for close to 3 decades.
What do you make of that? No Scotland, no party. Are you going to be booking your flights to America?
I sincerely hope so. I sincerely hope so. Oh, it's amazing. It's just...
What does this rank in terms of life events?
Probably just below our marriage.
What's your verdict on that?
I can't argue with that. That's it.
He's going to shoot. He's that good?
The last time Scotland's men went to the World Cup was 1998. Most of these players were not even alive then. But now the wait for a rerun is finally over.
Oh my God, my heart was like all over the place. It took us through all sorts of emotions, but oh my God.
I'm 45 now and never been to a World Cup, so here we go.
World Cup, so this will be my second.
For Scotland?
Yep, that's how you're into.
And are you going to go to America?
Well,
For a generation, hope has travelled hand in hand with heartbreak. But Scotland, right here at Hampden, have now rewritten the story. A victory for the nation and vindication for the squad.
Feels good. I said at the start of the campaign, I felt the pressure of the nation to try to get to World Cup. So immediately that falls off your shoulders and you feel a little bit better. But what a fantastic group of players. Never give up. I've said it for a long time now about how good they are and how determined they are to be good for their country. They showed that tonight. I couldn't be happier for my players. I couldn't be happier. It's fantastic. It feels great.
With practically the last kick of the ball to absolutely rubber stamp Scotland's place.
And so Scotland returns to the World Cup stage. This was the moment history finally turned in this country's favour. Conor Gillis, Sky News, at Hampden Park in Glasgow.
I could watch that again. Can we just cue it up?
I love it.
We're not going to cue that up again, but we have got... Don't roll it quite yet, because we've got to set them up. We know this plays very quickly for clearance reasons. We've got the 4 goals, but we've got to set this up because they needed to win Scotland, and they went ahead with this amazing bicycle kick from Scott McTominay, which is coming for you any minute now. After this goal went in, which is an epic goal, and we should dwell on it. Then Denmark equalised. Then Scotland went ahead again with this goal from Shankland. Then they pulled it back again, Denmark, and stoppage time. This was the key moment. Kieran Tierney, what an epic winner, and this bonus on top right at the end.
Yeah, and look, they're all done in front of Scottish fans as well in Hampden, and they were absolutely on their feet. In there and in all the pubs, as Conor Gillies discovered as well.
If I'd known, actually, I might have even stayed up to try and watch it. I didn't watch it live, obviously, but, God, the World Cup's going to be great. England and Scotland there, and I believe I'm right in saying Wales have got a playoff match to get there too, I think. So, fingers crossed.
Now, the campaign for transparency around the Jeffrey Epstein scandal reached a major milestone last night as the US Congress passed a bill to force the release of files related to the convicted sex offender.
The bill now heads to Donald Trump's desk for him to sign, which the president has indicated he will do, of course, despite his initial opposition to doing so. James Matthews has the story for us.
This is who you're fighting for. This is who Congress is fighting for. This is who the House of Representatives are fighting for.
This was me at 14 years old.
I was 16.
16.
They came to Capitol Hill with searing testimony, the centre of this story.
What's the message today, do you think?
It's going to be a powerful one.
To the President of the United States of America, who is not here today, I want to send a clear message to you. I am traumatized. I am not stupid. You didn't just make a small dent. You made a monumental impact.
Survivors of Jeffrey Epstein told their stories against a shifting political backdrop. Listen to the friend turned enemy of Donald Trump, the MAGA loyalist he now calls traitor.
A traitor is an American that serves foreign countries and themselves. A patriot is an American that serves the United States of America and Americans like the women standing behind me.
On a landmark day at Congress, the president was confounded outside and in. This was the vote Donald Trump had long resisted. Republicans from his party backed a vote to release the Epstein files. First in the House, then by unanimous consent in the Senate.
Without objection, so ordered.
The Senate has now passed the Epstein bill as soon as it comes over from the House.
Across Washington, Donald Trump was welcoming Mohammed bin Salman, the Saudi crown prince. If the Epstein vote was something he didn't want to see, it was the question he didn't want to hear.
Mr. President, why wait
for Congress to release the Epstein files? Why not just do it now?
You know, it's not the question that I mind, it's your attitude. You're a terrible person and a terrible reporter. As far as the Epstein files is, I have nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. I threw him out of my club many years ago because I thought he was a sick pervert.
Back on Capitol Hill, Donald Trump wasn't the only former Epstein associate in the frame. What do you say today to Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, the man formerly known as Prince Andrew?
I do think that Prince Andrew does need to come and testify at our oversight committee, and that can be bipartisan. But I share Thomas's view that the urgency that the British people have shown in getting justice needs to inspire an urgency here in America.
This was a significant step in the politics of justice. In this modern American scandal, it won't be the last. James Matthews, Sky News in Washington.
We're saying in the US, ahead of that vote yesterday on the Epstein files, President Trump welcomed Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman to the White House for a state visit.
So while he was in the Oval Office, the Crown Prince was asked by a journalist about claims that he ordered the murder of the Saudi critic and the former Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi.
As you'll probably remember, he was killed inside the Saudi consulate in Istanbul in 2018. The CIA concluded that the prince had approved the killing, something he's always denied. President Trump was asked about this by an ABC News journalist in the Oval Office yesterday.
As far as this gentleman is concerned, he's done a phenomenal job. You're mentioning somebody that was extremely controversial. A lot of people didn't like that gentleman that you're talking about. Whether you like him or didn't like him, things happen. But he knew nothing about it, and we can leave it at that. You don't have to embarrass our guest by asking a question like that.
It's extraordinary, the sort of snapshot. I think my two big takeaways, the snapshot of how different this was to 2018, 2019, when many American businesses had to cease operation and doing dealings with it, whereas they all then were at the dinner later on yesterday evening. And as we said before, this wasn't something that happened in the Democratic administration to lead to an opposition to MBS initially. It was during Trump won. It was 2018 and 2019 that this kind of view continued. So it's a big snapshot of difference since then. At the same time, a lot of time has passed since then. And as uncomfortable as a lot of this is, it's not that surprising. We knew this was happening. It's not just America that's doing a lot of business with MBS and Saudi Arabia now. It's us too, it's Europe too. And indeed, it was America under Joe Biden, who famously fist-pumped with MBS when they met. And that got a lot of coverage at the time. It wasn't a handshake, but it was a fist pump. So things have changed, whether people like it or not.
Now you've got Crown Prince in the White House for the first time in 7 years, and also America's selling weapons to the Saudis as well, those warplanes, the F-35s too. Coming up on Mornings with Ridge and Frost, we have got... OK, no, it's not snow. I thought it was snow, but it's not snow. Apologies. It's actually something much more interesting than that, although I do love
the snow's going to be good, yeah. It's snowing.
This is Millionaires, who want, actually, to be taxed more. We're going to be finding out why.
We are now doing the snow.
Oh, sorry. So confusing.
We are, to be honest...
We need another coffee. So it's all falling apart, Will.
We probably were in the wrong there, but we were both in the wrong. 100%. I thought we were doing... Have we got snow?
We are doing snow.
It's snowing!
This is what we're doing after this short break as well.
This is our director's house. These are pictures from an hour or so ago. And I think we have a live shot coming from our Sky headquarters. This is sort of West London. And... Well, no, it is snowing. Our director was just saying it's not really snowing. Well, it is snowing. This is a Christmas victory for us, I think.
This was earlier on.
An hour ago.
I mean, that is full snow. Of course, you know, we've got, in the south, we've got lots of snow here. If you're in other parts of the country as well, please send us in your pics, your videos. We're going to try and run them. I love a little bit of snow.
This is the best part of the snow as well, because it's all very exciting and it's before the country grinds to a halt. Because we're not brilliant at dealing with it. But there we go.
I should say that it does cause some tricky travel conditions. I have to be the sort of grown-up 10 to 4 in the room occasionally. A yellow warning in place across most of the UK, but email us. It's on your screens now, mornings@sky.uk, mornings@sky.uk, or you can contact me or Wilf on social media as well.
Send us your pictures, your snowy pictures. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. She's preparing the ground to raise taxes.
The budget, I've got to do the things that I think are right.
There are tax rises coming down the track.
You can't rule out further tax rises.
It's exactly what she's going to have to do.
She'll be talking about that when it comes to the budget.
We'll be talking everything money as the Chancellor reveals what's in her budget.
Goodness knows how it's going to play out if these tax rises are announced.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club.
4 more years!
Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Now, we're in the middle of pre-budget speculation, and one of the things that some people are keeping their eye on is whether or not there could be a taxi tax.
But leading up to the budget, it's something you may want to pay attention to, and our next guest is warning the government plans to impose a 20% VAT on minicab journeys, known as the taxi tax, could lead to increased violence against women and girls.
Well, Sharon Gafka is a Violence Against Women and Girls campaigner. She joins us here. Great to have you on the show. So what is a taxi tax, and is it actually going to happen then?
So it's rumoured that the Chancellor is looking at adding 20% on top of the
cost of an overall journey. We've seen lots of speculation in the news recently about, well, women's safety when travelling, about whether trains would have women's only carriages. And obviously lots of people said that's not going to happen. When I went out into the streets and spoke to women about what their concerns were about this, it said they were worried that this was going to impact their journeys home and their ability to participate in the nighttime economy.
And just to explain, this isn't a tax that's specifically directed at taxis. It's just at the minute, private hire operators don't pay VAT because they're classed as independent contractors, self-employed, but they haven't ruled out changing that. And I guess the fear is that would then be passed on to customers, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that it's going to hit the most vulnerable people in society. We've already seen for decades how horrible it is to travel on public transport if you're disabled. A lot of long-term sick people use taxis. When my mum was going through cancer treatment and I wasn't able to drive yet, I was using taxis every single day. Now, if I had 20% on top of those, I probably wouldn't have been able to go see my mum as frequently as I needed to. And there's going to have long-term repercussions to the economy. If people can't go out, if people can't necessarily get to and from work as easily, that's going to have other long-term things to look at.
It's a really interesting area that's being discussed because, obviously one area that you could do is put up VAT. It's currently 20%. But a lot of people do argue that instead you could look at the areas that it doesn't apply to. It doesn't apply to food. It's not expected that would change. It used to not apply to education. Obviously that changed and private education is taxed now, and some of these other exemptions are a sort of back doorway to not put up VAT, the rate, but cover it with more areas.
It's kind of the smorgasbord approach that Andy Haldane was talking about, right? So if they don't level up the kind of big taxes like VAT or income tax, then you've got to look at a whole load of other small things to do it.
How, Sharon, does this then, just elaborate on that point, so this is also, it's not just something that would be expensive for people, but you think it does have those safety knock-ons if people decide not to take taxis at all?
Yeah, I think that, well, for example, I know that if I couldn't afford to get a taxi home from a night out, I just wouldn't go out. And how many other women would feel the exact same way? So are we going to see repercussions on hospitality, in the nighttime economy, for people that just won't necessarily go out because they can't get home safely? And 64% of the public believe that this is a tax on working people, which is obviously against Labour's manifesto in the last election.
I guess this is the thing, because, look, some people listening might be like, us taking taxis all the time is not a great thing anyway. It's not very good for the environment, for a start, and we should be using more public transport or cycling or whatever it is. But I guess, that is easier said than done when the nights are really, really dark, and there is genuine safety concerns there, right?
Yeah, and I think, well, firstly, at a certain time in the evening, there is no forms of public transport, particularly outside of London. And if you are disabled, you don't have the option to cycle or walk, and sometimes taxis are the only forms of transport you can take, and it's those people that are going to be the most affected.
Great to have you on. Thank you.
It's what's really interesting about whether it's good or bad to be in taxis. The worst is owning your own car and driving everywhere. It's better to use a shared vehicle that's used more efficiently, and that's obviously getting on a train is less bad than getting in a taxi, but getting in a taxi is better than getting in your own car.
Or not driving everywhere, just using a taxi when you need to, as in when it's late or whatever it is.
And the really holy grail with all of this, of course, is if autonomous driving really works and robo-taxis really work, is it will drastically improve CO2 emissions and efficiencies, because we'll all just have a big network of vehicles we hop in the back of and you have to drive.
Completely different
world. But then that's not what they're talking about now with digital tax. Now we're in a different area. We're going to talk about a different tax that could be introduced, a wealth tax, and it's something that's being called for by Brian Eno and the YouTube economist Gary Stevenson. They're going to join us next.
Welcome back. Let's get you through the news this morning because there is a little bit of good news for households, although it's limited. Inflation, the pace at which prices are rising, fell to 3.6% in October, which appears is obviously down from 3.8% in September. Analysts now expecting it to continue to fall, but it doesn't mean that prices are falling, of course.
He's going to shoot. Is that good?
Scotland heading to the Men's Football World Cup finals for the first time in 28 years after they beat Denmark at Hampden Park last night, including epic late stoppage time winners. Some of the reaction to it you can see there.
There's a warning from MPs that Britain is not ready to defend itself or its overseas territories from military attacks. A report by the Commons Defence Committee also found the UK is failing to meet its NATO obligations at a time when Europe is under threat.
Well, here's the slogan you don't hear often: tax us, the super rich. It's usually the other way around, of course, but that's the slogan that a dozen millionaires will be taking to MPs in Parliament today ahead of the budget. And I'm delighted to say we're joined by the music producer Brian Eno and the economist and YouTuber Gary Stevenson, who are part of the campaign, and they do join us, which we thank them for. Brian and Gary, thanks so much for joining us on this. And Brian, is it fair to say you are one of those millionaires that has a message to say you would like to be taxed more?
Yeah, well, I would like the whole taxation system to be fairer, which means I would like rich people to pay more taxes than they do, and poor people to pay less taxes than they do.
And Brian, is this a message that you think, as surprising as the headline of saying I want to pay more tax, is actually something that you think is quite popular, even amongst people like yourself that would be the people footing the bill?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of us know that we actually are treated very particularly by the government. We're catered to in a way that poor people aren't. They don't have a voice, and they pay a lot of taxes, and they're understandably angry because things are kind of set up against their interests, I think. And I think that anger is what's given rise to a lot of the confusion and trouble in British politics. People know that something's wrong. They know that rich people don't pay much tax compared to their incomes. And, as a proportion of your income, poor people pay far more tax than we do.
And Gary, obviously you are one of the people that incredibly successfully has given a voice to this argument and other areas, explaining it on your hugely successful YouTube channel. What is your take on the best way to achieve this? Obviously all taxes do have some downsides. What's the most effective way to achieve this with as little downside as possible?
The first thing is you need to be looking at taxing wealth rather than income. People who work for their money pay already, in most cases, a very high level of tax, but families and individuals who have phenomenally high levels of wealth often pay almost nothing. I worked in the city, I made my money, I paid 50, 60, 70% if you include everything, and then the Duke of Westminster inherits 10 billion and pays nothing. So tax wealth, not work, is what I always say on my YouTube channel, Gary's Economics. But you need to design it carefully, which is why I'm always saying to the government, talk to me, bring me in, do the work, let's plan a wealth tax that taxes the wealth fairly in a way that they cannot avoid.
Obviously the sort of classic pushbacks to wealth tax include that it could push people away, wealthy people to live abroad. It's quite hard to implement, that not impossible, of course, but you'd need to hire people in the government to be actively valuing people's assets, which doesn't exist at the moment. Perhaps the strongest pushback is the idea that if you tax the same pool of wealth every single year, that it might then disincentivize people to either save or invest. What do you say to that criticism of the idea of a wealth tax?
Well, we're only looking to tax people with wealth of above £10 million, so it would have no incentive effect at all on the vast majority of the population. Once you look at the very, very, very rich, I don't think it'd be such a bad thing if they did spend a bit more. If they spent a little bit more and perhaps sold some of their assets, then maybe it would become affordable again for ordinary families to buy some assets. I think we're in this kind of absurd situation where we seem to want the rich to take a bigger and a bigger and a bigger share. At the same time, we're seeing basically the bankrupting of the government, the bankrupting of ordinary families, and we don't see the connection. You cannot allow the richest people in your society to take a bigger and a bigger and a bigger share in economies with almost no growth and not expect ordinary families to get poorer. The reason that ordinary families and the government are getting poorer year after year is because of this massively increasing inequality.
Brian, what do you say to that pushback that wealthy people would leave if these sorts of things happen? Do you think that that's possible? Clearly wouldn't apply to you, but could it apply to others?
It's funny, that seems to be the only thing that people are concerned about, that wealthy people might leave the country. What I'm worried about is that poor people already are abandoned by this country. You know, there's already a huge problem that we're not looking at. The problem isn't whether a few wealthy people leave, which, to tell you the truth, I couldn't give a toss about, to be perfectly honest. I don't think, since they don't pay so much tax, or they pay so little tax, it wouldn't make much difference if they did leave anyway in a fiscal way. What matters to me is that you have a whole disenfranchised group of people who know that the tables is set against their interests. They know that the house is always going to win. It's like gambling in a very bad casino. And these people are suffering. And of course they're desperate for some kind of recognition of that. And they show their desperation by voting for parties that are further and further to the right, who promise things that they know they can't deliver. So
Gary,
we're living on... Yeah.
Sorry, finish, Brian.
Go on, sorry. No, I said we're living on false promises at the moment.
Gary, just wanted to pick up on what Brian said there and something you said in your last answer, which is that you said that they want the rich to take a bigger share. Obviously, lots of people can agree or disagree on what's the best tactic or strategy to grow the economy and grow it in a fair way. But do you actively think that this Labour government wants the rich to take a bigger share?
I think this Labour government really, unfortunately, does not understand the part that inequality is playing on falling living standards. I wish they did understand that. The reason I started my YouTube channel in 2020 was because I could see at the beginning of COVID that inequality would increase massively and that would bring living standards down. Listen, I know I might not look like it, but I've studied economics at the London School of Economics and Oxford. I've had a very successful career in the city. I recognise that most economists do not see the importance of inequality. The reason I have a YouTube channel is because the people who get hurt by inequality are, unfortunately, in most cases, not people in places like this. It's people like the people watching now. What I want the public to understand is, in the vast majority of cases, the politicians and the economists are protected from the increased poverty being caused by inequality. It falls upon the British public to demand that these politicians do something about inequality. Because unfortunately, if the British public don't demand it, these guys, who in many cases are funded by rich people and also in many cases are quite rich themselves, will not do anything about it. So really, I'm here to talk to politicians, but more than anything, I'm here to talk to the public. To tell the public, if you do not demand reduced inequality, a fairer taxation system where you pay less and the rich pay more, this will get worse and the politicians won't do it for you. You need to demand it.
Well, we're out of time, guys, but thank you very much for joining us today, Gary, Brian, and we'll let you go and get somewhere warm, because as we were showing earlier, it's snowing now.
Are we good?
Thank you very much for joining us.
Anything, so I guess we're done? Yeah?
Just saying thank you. Yeah.
Oh, thanks.
I think it came out.
Oh, no.
Yeah, they're done. I love it. Great interview.
Really
interesting
interview.
Really very interesting to hear that perspective, and you can kind of definitely see the pre-budget kind of building with everyone trying to get their opinions across as well. Now, we've seen time and again the devastation a one-punch attack can have. Lives can be ruined in an instant.
35-year-old Matt Jeffrey was one of those victims, punched and killed while on a stag do in Greece in 2019. But a Sky News investigation has revealed a new suspect in his death.
So 2 men were convicted, but our Home editor, Jason Farrell, has discovered that one of the men might have been misidentified, and he's tracked down another man who, again, might have evaded justice for more than 6 years. Just watch this.
I didn't see the punch. The sound that I heard will never leave me.
The two assailants walk off at first and then run off up the street.
People are walking free for 6 years that have done this. That doesn't make any sense.
Whoever that person is, there's a big problem that night.
Even though police had a video showing them exactly what happened, we will reveal how they made the simplest of blunders. Is that you? Is that you?
Well, Jason is here now. That moment that we just saw at the end, that confrontation, I mean, that really looks quite something. Just talk us through how this all unfolded.
Well, we had, I was working with my producer, Nick Stilianu, and another producer called Lee Sorrell, who was looking at the extradition cases going through, and we noticed this case. We approached the family. The key thing at that point was that there were two men who'd been found guilty, and 6 years on, they were both walking free in the UK. And we spoke to the family about this, and we said we wanted to investigate it. We'd also noted in the files that one of the men had claimed that he hadn't been involved, even though there seemed to be a police confession. And when we looked into it more closely, we looked at photographs, we looked at video evidence, it did seem that the police had everything they needed to do to form a case. They had a CCTV of the build-up, and then also a video filmed on a mobile phone of exactly what happened. And one of the key things in it was that this second attacker was wearing white shorts. But in the photograph in the club, we could see that the guy that the police had convicted, who'd got a 10-year sentence, by the way, was wearing black shorts. So even though they hadn't turned up to court, we felt that there was something gone badly wrong with this police investigation.
And in terms of what, obviously, your fantastic report, and people should scan the QR code to watch in full, that reveals a lot more, and so don't want to spoil, but what could happen next? Where are we in terms of what still needs to happen? Yeah, well, this is really interesting. So one of the men has now been arrested. So the man who threw the final punch and the fatal punch that knocked Matt Jeffrey to the ground, he has been arrested. Finally, there's extradition. During the course of our investigation, those extradition papers were filed, and he is now in prison. So that happens during the course of the film. But the second person, who we've now identified could have been misidentified, as you saw, as Sophie mentioned, we front this guy up, but he has never been questioned by police. And the suggestion is that potentially now the British police could pick this up and they could investigate this guy.
Is that usual? Because obviously it happened in Greece, so you're kind of relying on overseas police. Do the British police sometimes get involved?
Well, I don't think it is normal, to be honest.
Yeah.
But you know, we have given these files to the Greek police, and there has been no kind of reaction, no response from them.
Have they not responded at all?
Or the prosecutors, nothing at all. And we've laid everything out very clear, and I've even handed it physically into the police bureau, as well as sending emails and speaking to them on the phone. So there's no response, no comment from them. So I think it would really be up to the British police. And I think the thing as well to say about this whole story is, you know, when you see a video like this, and it is there, I've never seen anything quite like it, the guy getting punched. You know, this does happen, and people don't realise that the consequences of their actions. And when we watched, I was editing this and then went home to watch Bridget Jones's Diary and saw Colin Firth punch Hugh Grant, you know, in that famous scene, and watched that and just thought, my God, that would have killed him. You know, and when you're watching it on TV and someone just brushes their cheek off and goes, you know, and comes back, you don't realise that, you know, these attacks that can happen outside clubs, and it happened not just once in that strip, but that's happened 3 times on that strip in the last 10 years. And that's just one area. This happens more often than we think. And we do need to get that message out to young people that it's extremely dangerous. But do watch the film. It's on at 9 o'clock on Friday, and it's also available now on YouTube.
Yeah, it's a really important message. Really, really important. Thank you, Jason.
And the QR code is there for you, or was there. But either way, as Jason said, 9 p.m. later in the week and online already. Coming up, we're joined by the author Danny Sita for an important chat about how to talk to young people, to children, about loss and trauma.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force.
It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Traveling is not just about the destination. It's also about how you get there. Fly Emirates, fly better. Fly Emirates, fly better.
Thank you. You can pick up.
Welcome back. And now we wanted to talk about the topic of grief, and in particular how it can affect children who go through grief. We're going to talk about it now. This week is, of course, Children's Grief Awareness Week, and it's all about how you address the topic when very young people do experience it. Well, Danny Sita has written a book called About Hedgehog, which encourages those important conversations, and she's with us now. Danny, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having
me. You've experienced personal grief in the last few years, is that right?
That's right, yeah. My mum very sadly died from a brain tumour in 2021, followed shortly by my stepdad, Jim, in 2022. And then my brother, he also died of a brain tumour, the same as my mum, less than a year later. So the devastation of losing 3 of your family members was a really challenging time for me. And as a previous early years teacher, I know how important it is to have the tools to kind of talk about it. And as an adult, I had those tools. But I remember not having the resources when we were teaching young children. And I wanted to do something with the grief that I had, which was overwhelming, and do something good, from that. So I wrote the book About Hedgehog for young children to help them understand and process bereavement.
Well, I mean, to go through that kind of thing and to try and make something out of it is really amazing. And thank you for doing that, coming on to talk about it. It's really interesting to me that you kind of linked to having known what children go through, because clearly going through grief at any age is brutal, but it's sort of inconceivable to me how tough it would be for a young child to go through it, which is what you wanted to focus on with this book.
Yeah, definitely. And as my time sort of teaching early years, we had children that suffered significant bereavement, and it was difficult finding the right tools for them. I wanted to create something that would support really young children, to give them the right words. We talk about death and dying in the book. So we're giving them the right words. We're not using words that could be more confusing for them. So it was about creating something that parents and teachers and professionals could use to open up those conversations, and to give children the permission to ask questions. There's a whole piece in there about them asking questions and giving them a voice in it. So that was really, really important to me.
As a parent, often it seems to me like you want to protect your kids from difficult stuff, to almost shield them from things that are difficult. But then I guess the sort of flip side of that is that you can't actually shield children from the world, right? In children, people die that children love as well. How important do you think it is for us to kind of, I guess, get over that squeamishness and just be quite direct in talking to kids?
Yeah, I think
you
it's...
need a moment any time.
Yeah, I think it's really important, actually. I think when you're an adult, it's confusing enough, and it can feel quite isolating in grief, and sometimes we don't get the right responses, etc., from people. So I think giving those tools to children when they're young, and making it a more normal conversation, so that they're not fearful of talking about it, and that's the most important thing. Because that means that
if they then do experience bereavement and grief themselves, they're going to know that they can talk to somebody about it. They're going to know how to ask the right questions and to have that time to process what's going on. So my sense of it is, if we can help children before bereavement by teaching them about death and what that means, then if they were to experience bereavement and afterwards, that gives them more tools to hopefully process their emotions and to get through that time.
Danny, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Congrats on the book, and thanks for sharing your story.
Thanks very much.
Danny Sita.
Now, we have been talking about snow in the programme because, oh my goodness, the temperatures have really dropped, and a lot of people have had snow, a little bit of November snow. And I want to show you some pictures first from Berkhamsted. So this was this morning. Look at that. I mean, that is proper snow. That is really, really coming down there.
Got in too early to see this. The pictures in Yorkshire for you next. There was a bit of a flurry. Motorists urged to take caution, of course, on roads today. That's a beautiful shot.
Absolutely gorgeous. I mean, look at that. That really is a sort of smattering of snow there in Jordan Crosby. In Buckinghamshire as well. That's Benny the dog, having a great time. Having a lovely, lovely time. Benny's about as excited as you are about the snow, I think.
Always does make them go a little bit kind of crazy, get on a high, despite it being very cold.
A couple of people have sent in pictures from social media for me, which I'm always very, very happy about. So if you want to send your pictures in, do. This is Linda. This is Linda who emailed us in to the mornings@sky.uk email account. This is Camberley in Surrey. Beautiful. Look at that lovely little bit of snow. It looks very picturesque, doesn't it?
And I think we've also got a live picture above Skye, which is
not quite as picturesque.
Not as beautiful.
I'll be honest. But that is snow.
We're coming from you in Westminster. That is Skye headquarters in the west of London. Do continue to send these, and obviously stay safe today, but enjoy the snow. And send us in your pictures over the course of the day, and we'll try and bring some of them. It's meant to be a one-day thing, this snow, I believe.
That's
so enjoy it. Enjoy it whilst it lasts. And thanks for sending in some of those pictures.
I think Berkhamsted's the winner. Look at that. Absolutely brilliant. Thanks very much for joining us on the programme this morning. It's been another busy news day. More to come tomorrow. We'll see you then.
Lots more to come on Sky News today with Gareth after this short break. Don't go anywhere.